Alright, a very good morning, Twitch, YouTube, and all you aviation fans out there. Welcome back to another ride-along in a pilot's life. Sorry about that, and of course I've got my audio monitor on my second channel, and I don't ever mute it in time. So yeah, welcome guys, back to the channel as always, and today we're going to be doing another flight for Air Transat, still working for Air Transat. This time we're going to be doing the flight in the good old PMDG Boeing 737 NGXu. As you can see, done up in the beautiful Air Transat colors here. And for those of you that haven't guessed it or didn't read the caption to the stream here, we are starting out today in Montreal. So there's the Montreal Airport Marriott just behind the terminal building there, the control tower over there in the distance. We're at the international end of the terminal, and we are going to be heading down to Fort Lauderdale today. Here's our current flight, Montreal all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, beautiful sunny Florida, and it's gonna be a pretty good flight, I think. Unfortunately, we did have Hurricane Isaiah make its way up the east coast over the last couple of days, but that is long gone now. So hopefully, we got some sunny skies to head down to Fort Lauderdale and enjoy the beautiful LatinVFR scenery when we get there. That's a really, really nice, well done airport. If there's one company that's now beginning to really give Fly Tampa a run for its money, I think it's LatinVFR. In terms of the level of detail, unfortunately, the flip side of that is that much like Fly Tampa scenery, the LatinVFR scenery is taking a real toll on performance like few other sceneries do. And it's not true of all of their sceneries, but their most recent ones. Their recent update of Miami and Fort Lauderdale both combined seem to both do a good number on the performance of any good computer. So, but that being said, we're still going to do it anyways. We're going to head down there. We're going to have some fun. Not too much has happened in a pilot's life since I did my last stream, which was only a couple days ago, so we're not going to go into this too much here. All we're going to do is quickly just look at what we're doing right now in terms of the scope of our entire schedule, which is we're going to go to Fort Lauderdale. From Fort Lauderdale, we're going to go back to Toronto, and then again, we're going to do the shot from Toronto over to Montreal. Two longer legs, but then our nice really short leg there to kind of punctuate it, and I kind of like that one I did last time. We had full ATC from end to end, which is something we never seem to get in the VATSIM world, and I'm not complaining, but certainly in the days that I fly, it just never seems to happen when you get end-to-end ATC. You get a lot of intermediate ATC, but for every single sector to be online, happens pretty rarely. And I'm okay with that. I can live with that. It's not the end of the world. It's just, it was really nice to have that the other day. That's why I specifically did an afternoon stream the other time, just to catch all that ATC that's online. Anyways, we're going to get started here in just a moment. Before I get started, I've just got to do one thing, and I will be right back in one moment here. Alright, so we're going to hop in the flight deck here. As always, we're going to get started. I've been having this long debate with myself over whether... Oh, that's not the button to press. That's the button to press. Over whether or not to include the FS2 crew, or to do like a flight like solo in the 737. And I kind of like the idea because the 737 is an airplane that requires a fair amount of attention from the pilot. Not in a bad way, but just that you've got to be... there's just a lot to do. Much like the Mad Dog, there's a lot to do in the 737. I'm going to mute that so he stops listening to me. But... I don't know if that really goes with the whole pilot's life career, because you don't really ever fly a jet solo in a pilot career. So, and you know, I've gotten very used to FS2 crew. I like FS2 crew to do a lot of the things for me, and I'm beginning to forget my flows for the 737, which I think is partly part of the reason why I would rather do a couple of flights without the FS2 crew. I think what I'll do is the next time I do some personal flying, I'll do it without the FS2 crew just to practice up my 737 skills, because I don't feel ready to tackle the 737 on a stream, having not practiced in the last little while my FS2 crew flows. There's a lot of stuff the FS2 crew FO does. In fact, he does 90% of the work, it seems. Really leaves you just to do the FMS programming and actually flying the airplane. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to continue to use the FS2 crew to our advantage here. And we're going to go ahead and get this party started here. As you can see, it's not even fired up yet. There we go. Now the battery's discharging. And the GPU's available already. There we go. GPU's online. Just look way up and get your IRSs on and aligning. And while you're up here, I wonder if I can do it this way. Yeah, it's a little better. Check your Mach airspeed warning and your flight controllers all activated. Your green lights, of course, the landing gear. And we want to make sure, of course, we have the beacon should already be on. It is. Emergency lights can go on. Windshield heat can go on. Packs can go to auto. Set the parking brake. And we're just about good to start here anyways. Let's get FS2 crew going here. Gate pushback. I'd want to be airborne by on the hour, at least off the gate. So let's see if we can do this. 15 minutes if we can be off the gate. Do derated with assumed temperature, which is the lowest power setting we can basically use. See if we can do it with a flat 10 today. Alright. And let's go ahead and let's run the pre-flight event.
Get this show on the road.
And I realize I have a double audio going on. There we go. That should also kill that on my end there. Landing gear handle is up for some reason. There, now it's down. So before we do anything else, let's get a few.
For the walk around.
Thank you. Let's get a few things started here. Let's go ahead and request refueling. As we determined on our last flight, refueling is the most important thing to request first. If you request fueling first, then the fuel truck will be dispatched, and then the catering trucks can come at the same time. But if the catering trucks or the baggage carts are already at the airplane, the fuel truck will not pull up and get in the way until afterwards. So I find that a little bit frustrating. It's not the end of the world, but it's a little, like I said, a little bit frustrating. There we go. So we're gonna do that. So now the fuel truck should be on its way, the catering truck should be on their way, and my FO's out doing his walk around, which means we can just make sure that everything is hunky-dory in the flight deck. Flip the odd number on because I find the FO sometimes forgets that. It doesn't matter if the system's not pressurized anyways too much, but at least it's on. We don't need lighting. Every time you get in this airplane, you should switch that ignition switch. And just having a quick scan through the upper panel here to make sure everything is the way it should be before we hit up our FMS for the major part of the programming. So today we will activate the data link here. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to just pause the track IR for a minute. Oh. I always pull that up and then I think it's ready and it's not. There it is. Alright, and so we've got our FMS here. I'll pull it up on the second. I'll pull it up on the. It's all the way over here now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we do initialize the flight in the ACARS system. That's always important to do in the real world because you need to identify which flight you are. So, you know, airplanes can be switched around at the last minute so that the ATC or the airline computer is not necessarily always up to date. It should be, in theory, but it's not always. So you always need to, when you start a flight, initialize and tell it which flight you are, and then it also knows. Notifies your airline's computers when the dispatchers try to send a message to a specific flight ID. The ACAR system knows which actual airplane to route that flight number to. So estimated departure time, I don't think it's going to happen, but we're going to put in 1400Z. And we have, let's see here, I'll pull up my flight plan here, if I can get it. Just trying to get it over here. You don't need to see that, and I'm just going to pull it over here. So our flight number today is Transat 570. Some systems require you to put in the airline ID. Some are automatically programmed to know which airline you work, your aircraft is working for. 3 hours and 12 minutes, and then we send a initialization message. And we have the catering vehicles are in position, so let's go ahead and just doors, open the forward and the aft door. And so now the ACARS menu, ACARS system should be synced. And eventually be able to get information and retrieve your flight plan and everything else. Now, I'm not so concerned with the flight plan, but I am concerned with getting the wins. I do like to have the wins available because it makes just for more realistic ETAs. Alright, so there's our ident. Check your AIRAC, make sure everything's happy. I think next week the AIRAC expires, so we're going to have to make sure we do have that updated in time. That's an interesting question too, is there's going to have to be some kind of an AIRAC database for some of the GPSs in the new flight simulator. I wonder how up to date it's going to be, and if there's going to be a vehicle for updating it. You know, these are things that were never really even were never really even being considered, I think, when the previous version of Flight Simulator was published. And even P3D sort of inherited that as having kind of outdated AIRACs and not being too concerned with it. But I feel like Asobo has taken a lot of time to listen to the community and has spent a lot of time realizing that how the community likes to act, what they're looking for, you know, in terms of realism and everything else. Okay, so yeah, I would say we're going to do depart 24 left in the Montreal 1 departure, and the fuel truck is here. So again, if we go back to my flight plan here, total fuel, block fuel 13.4 kilos, and then we round up to a little bit because they always just throw an extra. They always throw a couple hundred extra kilos because they never want to get called back in case you're down just a little bit. So they always kind of round up just a little bit, you know, like an extra 1, 2, 3%. You know, just an extra 100 or 200 kilos. Just overcome any errors and settling and whatever else. Yeah, so I feel like Asobo has been more ready, really listening to the community right from the outset, right from when they first made their announcement. They've been listening to the community. Hence, VR will be coming to. Flight Simulator.
Hi, the security and safety checks are all done. Are we good to start boarding?
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay, closing those doors. Yeah, so I feel like they've been listening to the community more than previous versions. Developers now, more than ever, are involving the communities that they're making their products for in the development process, which is great for the end user. I think it's an incredible age we live in where the end users are having a huge amount of influence on the product that's being produced. So you know, I wonder if Asobo is listening. Are updatable AIRACs going to be even an option in the new sim? You know, for those aircraft that have a built-in GPS, that have the G1000 screens, are they going to be updatable? J37 JFK. Oh yeah. Lost my where I was in the flight plan there. J79 to
okay, I'm back from the walk around.
SBY.
Everything looks good.
Thank you. So anyways, I wonder how that's going to work out. Curious to see if they've listened, because I know a lot of the community likes to have current AIRAC data. They like to fly real airplanes in a current real world environment. North 34, West 77. That'll be the VORDME we're looking for. Anyways, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it would almost surprise me more if they didn't, because they've been listening so hard to the community for so long now. Trans, and then the Faisal 7. And the estimate's 10 left for arrival. ILS 10 left. I'll go with Hollid. Faisal 7. Trans transition. Listen to all that clicking that FO is doing there. Now, it is handy to have this FO. I will 100% acknowledge it's very handy to have this FO, especially when you're trying to get the stuff done quickly, because then he does a lot of the switch flipping and can leave you to focus on inputting the flight plan while he does everything else, which is great. But at the same time, part of the joy of the NGXu that I have always found is the fact that you learn to fly this aircraft. You know, and it's not the simplest aircraft in the world. It's not incredibly complicated, but it's not a simple airplane to fly. So to me, it gives me a great sense of pride when I can take this airplane from cold and dark, get it all fired up in the correct order, and take it up flying. Of course, in the real world, you don't do it that... Alright, put the cruise altitude first. In the real world, of course, you don't do it that way. In the real world, you have a team that works together to get the airplane up in the air efficiently so that you can get it up in the air in less than 40 minutes. But yeah, I do have a sense of pride when I can get it done. So I think on my next leg, or maybe on the Toronto to Montreal leg, I might just do the whole thing by myself without FS2 crew. We got a decently heavy airplane. Let's go with takeoff D rate 1. Let's pick a nice high temperature there, 37-degree D rate, and let's see if I can get numbers at flap 10. It does look like we can get numbers at flap 10, so let's do it. 47, 48, and 51. Lower flap settings for takeoff are always great because they're usually less drag, but they increase your takeoff roll substantially. Mostly because you need to reach that higher speed before you can rotate. Okay, so that's all in there. He's doing his thing. I still need to do a few things down here. I'm just going to get rid of the FMSs for now because you don't need them. And so what was I doing here? Yeah, so we're going to go with the MCP. So the speed there is 151 V2. We're going to go heading of 237. I'm going to set the altitude to 49 for now in case any ATC does show up. There we go, get the flight directors on, get the auto thrust armed. Don't know if it's going to happen, but we're going to try. And, yeah, what's the altimeter again here in Montreal? Sorry, looking at my other screen to get my altimeter. 3010. And the FO's already set it there. Perfect. Great. Let's just test the auto thrust and FMC enunciators. Test all the light bulbs in the flight deck, and there are a lot. That's the one thing that's kind of overwhelming about this. It reminds me a lot of the Dash 8. There are just lights, indicator lights, and light bulbs everywhere in this flight deck. It appears that they're all working. Honestly, noticing that one of these bulbs is burnt out would be a bit of a challenge, but and I thought the same thing in the Dash. After a long time flying the Dash, I got very good at noticing when certain bulbs are off. Even though you don't really realize it on a conscious level, subconsciously you know where all the lights are in the flight deck and what the flight deck should look like when it's illuminated. So it's amazing that you do develop this ability to notice that there's a light missing, even though they're all sort of all over the place, much like this airplane. Alright, we got 2000, we got 22.8. Let's just make sure we got the radio turned on just in case we need it. There we are. I think he's just about done his checklist. Did I do my oxygen? I didn't. Pre-flight checklist.
Let me finish my pre-flight procedure first.
Okay. I'm sorry. Since I can't actually see your hands, buddy, I don't actually know what you're doing and if you're done yet. So don't be a jerk. Because that sounded like a bit of a... sounded a little passive-aggressive there. How about now? Pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Oxygen.
Tested 100%.
Tested 100%. Navigation transfer and display switches. Normal, auto. Window heat, on. Pressurization mode selector, auto. Flight instruments.
Heading 193, altimeter 3010. Altimeter 3010.
Checked. Parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Cut off.
Pre-flight checklist complete.
Check. Alright, so we're going to blame that gate agent there for not boarding us on time, but it looks like the fuel truck came and it went, the catering came and went, we're just waiting for the luggage to be loaded, and I think we'll be good to go. Are you ready for the takeoff briefing? Are you ready for the departure brief?
Go for it.
Alright, and I should probably pull up my charts here. These may be expired because I haven't used them in this thing for a little while here, but let's just use airports from FMS. Complete. Oh, maybe they're not. Oh, they're not expired. Nice, I like it. Alright, let's just get the parking spots and coordinates one and the Montreal one departure. Complete. And show me the chart clip. Okay, so we are parked on the main terminal. Oh, unlike the Aerosoft bus, we don't have a moving map, but that's okay. We don't have an own ship display on the move map. But we're parked at the main terminal here in Montreal. First of all, in the event of any abnormality or the proprietary taxiable stop, this will be a left seat takeoff. Any malfunctions prior to the V1 of 147, a call stop or go. If the call to stop, will close the thrust lever, apply maximum reverse. Apply maximum reverse. No. Oh, I got that messed up. I'll call stop. Apply maximum brakes. Disconnect the auto throttle. Apply maximum reverse stop in the runway. Set the parking brake. PA remain seated. And call for any required memory items and curates checklists. The emergency turn off runway 24 left is just to continue straight ahead runway heading 237 all the way up to 1,200 feet to retract the flaps, and then up to at least 3,000 feet for a reasonable minimum altitude in this area. And that's it. Once established in final action in the emergency. The taxi out's going to be very straightforward, a little bit lengthy though. It's going to be out from, we're about here on the main terminal, so it'll probably be north ramp and Alpha 4 Alpha, crossing the threshold of runway 28, which is closed, all the way to runway 24 left, which is the only open runway here. The hotspots along the way are mainly involving the intersection of Alpha and Alpha 4, which is a little bit complicated to make sure we turn the right way, and also make sure we do hold short of 28 unless we're clear to cross. We don't have any ATC online yet. I don't think we're going to get any, so we're just going to be keeping an eye out for ourselves. The departure today is the Montreal 1 departure, Montreal départ. Is on page 10-3 and effective the 17th of May 2019. Notes are all pretty standard for Montreal. Contact departure, airborne, 100 miles safe, 7400, and follow the noise abatement. For runway 24 left specifically, is climb heading 237 north, assigned for vectors to assigned route, and let's let the somebody to see jet aircraft maintain 5,000. I'm not expecting any ATC at this point, so we're going to go ahead and put 5,000 feet in there. And yeah. And that's basically it. We're going to get a vector on course from there. Terrain, it's on here, 3,000 feet MSA all around the Montreal airport, or the Montreal VOR, which is northwest of the field. Weather is, it's a nice day here, nice enough anyways. Cooler than it has been. The heat wave is finally broken. Man, July was hot this year. And operational, no MELs on this aircraft. And let's see if I have a flight plan. Nope, not that one. This one here. NOTAMs, no TAMs. Due to reduced capacity, this is COVID related as much as it's taxi related. 24 left, Bravo. 24 right, Bravo. 24 right, 1028 closed. 24 right closed. Yeah, that's all related to the fact that 24 right's closed for a long term anyways. And that's basically it. Any questions?
No questions.
Start the APU, please.
Starting APU.
There we go. He's doing that. We should be almost done loading. Here comes the baggage train. So another couple of minutes here. We'll be done loading and we'll be on our way. While we're waiting, I can just make sure that I do have my Sim Toolkit Pro ready to track my flight here. And I can even go to the live map just to show you what it looks like. I was flying in Denmark last. There we go.
Load sheet for you.
Thank you. And with the load sheet, we need to make sure we do go in and reset our ZFW to match what's actually loaded. So let's just go. This guy's messing with the FMS here. Oh, look at that. He's doing it all for us.
Watch out for your leg, please.
He's even setting the trim
Verify takeoff speeds.
by hand. Wow, I never noticed they do that before in FS2 crew. Ha! Wow, that is impressive. I would prefer that the FO not do that without the captain being told what he's doing. I don't care so much about setting the trim, but actually putting in the ZFW, which is going to affect the calculations. I'd rather see the FO do it. And the fact that he doesn't call my attention to it normally, that upsets me a little bit as a captain. There's one thing you learn when you're in aviation, one thing that's super important, and that is you don't do anything in a two-crew environment without telling the other person what you're doing. Okay, so payload, let's just verify that, 57.6, yeah, no, that is correct. While we're at it here, let's just have a quick look and make sure engine oil quantity and hydraulic quantity are both okay, good. Alright. And we're done boarding, we're ready to go. APU generators on. Cockpit to ground. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
Please disconnect external power.
Roger. Disconnecting the GPU.
Hey guys, all passengers are on board. Are we clear to close?
Yes. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me know if you need anything.
Alright, we're ready to go. 8 minutes behind schedule, it's not too bad. I'm expecting her to close that door.
Captain, the GPU is disconnected.
Thank you. There goes, door's closed. Maybe I have to do this myself, it's fine. And there we go. Before start checklist to the line.
Before start checklist to the line. Fuel 13.7 tons. Pumps on. Passenger signs on. Windows.
Locked. Closed. Closed and locked.
Locked. MCP.
Speed 151. Heading 237. Altitude 5,000.
Checked. Takeoff speeds.
V1 145, VR 146, V2 149. V2 149.
Checked. CDU pre-flight.
Complete.
Completed. Rudder and aileron trim.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Free and 0. Free and 0. Free and 0.
Locking gear.
Set and checked.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Complete.
Before start checklist completed to the line.
Good behind me, nobody coming. Before start checklist below the line.
Bypass pin
Flight
inserted.
deck door closed and
Release
locked.
parking brakes.
Anti-collision light on. Before start checklist complete.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Start sequence is 2, then 1.
Check.
Start engine 2.
Starting 2.
Alright, just a quick VATSIM check just to make sure nobody's sneaking up on us, but it looks like we're all alone in Montreal, sad as it may be. And wait for the 25% and 2. Fuel on. Make sure this is on the current flight page so it starts on its own as well. Alright, we do have N1, EGT's rising, N2's rising, fuel flow's up, oil pressure's up, oil temperature's rising. Vibration is low. There goes 56%. There's the starter cutout.
Starter cutout.
Thank you. Just waiting to see it stabilize. And usually the sign something stabilized, an engine stabilized well, is the fact that EGT is now dropping, so it's starting to drop down to normal operating temperature. Start engine 1.
Starting 1.
We now request your full attention as the flight attendants demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft. When the seatbelt sign illuminates, you
Set
can fasten
parking
your
brakes.
seatbelt. Insert the flat metal clip to the buckle and pull the loosen strap to
Waiting
tighten
your
it up.
confirmation
To
for
release
good
your
engine
seatbelt,
start.
lift the upper
We
portion
got
of the
N2
buckle.
rotation.
Suggest that you keep your seatbelt fastened throughout
We got
the flight
oil
as the
pressure.
is turbulent. There are several emergency exits on this aircraft, 2 forward, 2 aft, and 2 over each wing. Please take a moment to locate the exit nearest you. In some cases, the exit may be behind you.
Fuel valves
To
open.
evacuate the aircraft,
Fuel flow.
lighting will guide you toward the exit. Doors can be
EGT
opened
rise.
with the handle in the direction of the arrow.
N1's
Doors
rising.
equipped with an inflatable slide, which may also be attached and used as a life raft. Oxygen and air pressures are always being monitored. In the event of a decompression, an oxygen mask will automatically appear in front of you. To start the flow of oxygen, pull the mask towards you. Place it firmly over your nose and mouth and secure the elastic band behind
Yeah,
your
we'll
head.
confirm the good start momentarily.
Although the bag does not inflate, oxygen is flowing to the mask. If
Starter
you're
cutout.
traveling with a child or someone who requires assistance,
Checked.
secure your mask on first and then assist that other person. Keep your mask on until an uniformed crew member
Stabilizing.
advises you to remove it. In the event of an emergency, please assume the bracing position.
Alright guys, clear to
Lean
disconnect and go
forward,
to hand
keep the
signals.
top of your head and your elbows against your thighs. Ensure your feet are flat on the floor. A life vest is located in a pouch under your seat or between the armrests. When instructed to do so, open the plastic pouch and remove the vest. Flip it over your head. Rest the
I find it
strap
funny that
around
this
your waist
GSX
and then
ground ramp guy over here
place the
walks
vest
so far
on
away
the red cord only
to give us a
when
signal
leaving
before he
the
walks back to
aircraft.
disconnect.
Refill the
Because in
vest
the real
close
world,
to the
these
mouth.
guys are always hungry
Use
to
the
move
whistle
on to the
button
next
to
step.
attract attention.
It blows my mind. I've actually had an aircraft that was disconnected from the tug before the parking brake was set. Because these guys are so eager, they stop the airplane,
Unlocking gear.
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight.
and the guy that's in the tug who's talking to the people in the airplane says, yep, set your parking brakes.
Bypass bin.
And as soon as the ramp guys see him say that, before they even get a confirmation, a thumbs up from the guy who's driving the tug, some of them will be popping the tow bar off the airplane as soon as they hear that. And not every pilot is instantly does it. They don't do it in a second. I've always been trained to be patient, especially with this, because I've had I had an incident where I was told to set the brake before the airplane would actually stop moving. And if you set a parking brake while the airplane is moving, the whole thing will come to a screeching halt really quick. And if the tug's still moving, there's a good chance of breaking the nose gear, or at least doing some serious damage because of the inertia of the tug still pushing on the nose gear when the whole rest of the airplane suddenly comes to a stop. So, yeah, alright. So, yeah, I find it funny, like, this guy's so far away, but in the real world, they're so eager to disconnect right away. They're always ready to get out of there and move on to the next airplane. Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Elevators. Ailerons. And rudder. And he's doing his thing. Any second now. Before taxi checklist.
Before taxi checklist. Generators on. Probe heat on. Anti-ice off. Isolation valve, auto. Engine start switches, continuous. Recall, checked. Auto brake, RTO, engine start levers,
Idle detent.
flight controls.
Checked.
Dispatch clearance,
Received. Checked.
checked. Before taxi checklist complete.
Clear on the left.
Clear right.
And off we go. Just gonna have a real quick look at my sim brief window. And it did auto start. Perfect. Well, not my sim brief window, my pilot's life window. Alright, farewell. Farewell, Montreal. A bientôt. We'll see you very soon. 2 legs in, we'll see you again. But for now, we're off to beautiful sunny Florida and Fort Lauderdale. Such a quiet airport this morning. Not totally unlike the way the real world is these days. I've been to Montreal a couple times and it is darn quiet out there now. The whole world is darn quiet. This is an airport I think that also is starting to feel some capacity constraints in the real world. Not right now, not in the COVID era, but just in the pre-COVID era. It was definitely feeling like there were times where this airport could get easily quickly saturated. It kind of keeps up with what is asked of it most days, but any kind of poor weather comes your way. I've had some bad experiences here. This was one of the only places where I've ever had to go back to the de-icing bay because we waited so long to take off that the holdover time on our de-icing fluid expired. And I think it was just a capacity constraint issue. Part of the problem with this airport too is that it's got a whole bunch of big runways, but only one runway that's really suitable for poor weather operations. I won't necessarily say that. One runway in each direction that's suitable for poor weather operations. So 06 left or 24 left if you're facing the other way. 06 left is the only Cat 2 runway, but then if you're facing the other way, 24 right minimums are higher, and 24 left is the only one that can get you in when it's really low. So there are some operational equipment constraints here that often end up causing a lot of issues. So I have run into issues twice here actually. Now that I think about it, I've had to go back to the de-icing bay. The one time it wasn't because the holdover time expired. It was because the first time I did it was because the windshield wiper had actually frozen to the window, to the because it had frozen to the, not the window, but like the pillar between the two windows. The wiper was stuck there, and we couldn't actually operate it, and you can't legally depart without it operating. So we actually had to go get a ramp guy to just knock it loose knock the ice off from around it. But then by then our holdover time had expired. If we hadn't had that frozen windshield wiper blade, we would have been fine. But yeah, I think the only 2 times in my career that I've had to go back and get de-iced again, certainly in recent times, are both in Montreal. But Montreal does get a heck of a winter too. That's something else. I never turned the taxi light on, so let's just get that on. But that's one thing that I've dealt with in Montreal. But yeah, it really blew my mind the second time when we had to go back to the icing bay, because it was just, we could only land and depart on one runway because of the weather, because of the winter weather. They could only depart and land on one runway, and the arrivals were so backed up and so tightly spaced that not one single airplane took off for a good 40-minute period. We just all sat there waiting for our turn to take off, but never got there because they were prioritizing all the arrivals, which unfortunately then made the airport completely saturated on the ground. There were no gates left to go back to when we finally had to go back to a gate. Alright, left turn here on Alpha. It was a little bit of a stressful day that day anyways. Quickly turned into a 14-hour day. And it's funny, the days that you think are going to be bad often aren't the ones that are bad, and then the ones that do end up being bad are ones that just sneak up on you, where you're not really expecting a whole lot of bad weather. It's going to be just a little bit bad, but the circumstances just combine to make a really bad day. Set strobe light to on. Set strobes to on.
Strobes coming on.
Clear on the left.
Clear right.
Flight Tampa has done a very nice job with the scenery, and I'm excited to see what their next generations of scenery look like. I think the difference now is that all these designers that have done really good things with the existing platform, probably better than was ever intended, the platform is now going to be catching up to them, and a lot of their airport's not going to shine as much because the rest of the platform is going to start to look pretty good. Set strobes to off.
Strobes going off.
So I think that's going to be the other interesting thing too, is like, I don't think you're going to see like a hugely revolutionary improvement in a lot of the high-end scenery, because they really are pushing the limits of what a computer can process. I think it's just the rest of the world that's going to catch up. That'll be the nice thing, I think, is when you drop into an airport that you don't have scenery for, it's still going to look reasonably good, and certainly the in-between scenery that you're overflying is going to look really good overall. I'm getting super stoked for this sim at last. I was skeptical of it for a very long time, I think, and not so much because I hadn't seen previews of it, but you know, it until it actually gets dropped, it's vaporware. And certainly if you don't have a release date, a realistic release date, it's all just vaporware. It's all just, well, you know, we can say anything we want about it, we can show you any pictures we want, because we haven't actually built it yet. It may not look like this when we're done. But the fact is now we're into the home stretch. It's less than 2 weeks now. RDA factory. This is where they make all the Challenger jets that have kept Bombardier in business for so long. I'm not sure if they make the bigger jets here or not. The Global Express 7000s. Yeah, all their business jet market here, or their business jet manufacturing facilities are here anyways.
Cabin is secure.
Checked. Well, you might as well do it, because we're almost there. Before takeoff checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Flaps.
Flaps 10, green light.
Stabilizer trim.
5.6 units.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
Haha! I am slowly learning more and more phraseology. There's a few that have defeated me, and that was one that I could not figure out what the call was. I finally looked it up today. Migrations RS, if I purchase version 5. I have not, and I was on the cusp of almost going to do it when Microsoft announced the release date for 2020. And I've since decided that I'm going to just sit with version 4 here, and 2020 will be the other sim that's on my computer, because just in terms of hard drive space, I have an SSD for flight sim drives. I could probably have 2 sims installed in there. There's no way I could have 3, and I would probably try to keep P3D version 4 around for the aircraft that have not yet been updated, which is a quickly shrinking list, but I think there's still a couple. Clear on the left.
Clear right.
Before takeoff procedure.
Check.
So yeah, I'm probably not going to upgrade to version 5 unless Microsoft Flight Simulator has some glaring oversights, or there's some aircraft that never make it in there. But for the time being, no, my money has now been earmarked for Flight Sim 2020. That's going to be a huge change.
Ready to go.
Checked. And yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not totally against version 5, and if, Microsoft Flight Simulator disappoints, or if certain aircraft that I'm hoping for do not eventually get ported over there, I may upgrade to version 5 and have 2020 and prepared version 5 running in tandem on my computer. But at this point, I am not planning on upgrading to version 5 anytime soon now. And I was going to do it too. I was almost going to do it. I had pretty much already said I was going to spend the money to myself, and then they announced the release date. Here we go. Set takeoff thrust.
Check. Thrust set. knots.
Checked. Gear up. Gear up. Select heading select.
Heading select.
Set speed 220.
Speed 220 set.
Flaps 1.
Flaps 1.
Set speed 230.
Speed 230 set.
Flaps up.
Flaps up.
Select nav. Select.
Something's wrong here.
Select LNAV.
LNAV.
Set flight level 340. After takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. Engine bleeds. On. Packs. Auto. Landing gear. Up and off. Flaps. Up. No lights. After takeoff checklist complete.
Select level change.
Level change.
Level change.
Flight level 340 set. Happy to release the cabin crew?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay.
Select VNAV.
VNAV.
See if we can make it to 10,000 feet hand flying here just for fun. In order to do that, I really need to take advantage of my FO and get him to do the work for me here. Alright, so now we're LNAVing to Bugsy. Still hand flying, still autopilot. But why not? Have a little fun, right? Nice morning here. Retain those skills of hand flying. Because you can hand fly a jet. You don't have to put the autopilot on at 1,000 feet every single time. If you're new to an airplane, or if it's a busy workload, absolutely do it. But this is a pretty straightforward SID. It's a vector SID. You just get a turn-on course. I'm not even sure 340 is our final altitude that we're supposed to be going up to. But I know it's somewhere in that range, so let's just check it really quickly here. Still hand flying. Still hand flying. Yeah, 340 was the altitude. Good. why not, right? Let's have a little bit of fun in this world, and also retain your skills too. This is something that I think is a real problem for a lot of pilots these days, is that they get so used to autopilot on at 1,000 feet that if the autopiloter failed on them, you know, I don't know what some people would do. Some people would be fine with it, but some people. Select Command A.
Okay to release the cabin.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
Select Command A.
Command A.
Alright, now the autopilot's on. Now he's doing his thing. He's got the lights off and the pressurization system. Let's see here. Altitude's at 0. Differential's increasing, and I think the cabin is starting to show a climb right there. And the seat belts he's got off. Oh, this guy never set the cruise altitude properly. Oh, see, I'm relying on him to do these things. There, now the cabin altitude's going to start climbing. That's why, because I thought we were going to cruise at 10,000 feet. Yeah, okay, that's an excellent question. What's the industry practice regarding autopilot on at 1,000 feet? So first of all, most aircraft have a minimum height at which you can put the autopilot on. And generally, in most aircraft, it is 1,000 feet. And yes, it is much easier to hand fly when you have an FO to do things for you, because the whole idea of hand flying is that you are focused on what you're doing. Yeah, so I'll back up to the first question first again. Yeah, so in general, companies like you to use the autopilot. The primary reason being that it reduces workload and it allows you to focus on the overall management of the flight. If you're focused on hand flying and actually maintaining a specific speed and altitude the whole time, you have a harder time dealing with any kind of aircraft systems that are happening. You have a harder time sort of managing the flight overall and kind of looking downstream. If you've got, you know, some convective weather or something up ahead that you may be watching out for, it's hard to do that when your focus is solely here on just the speed and the speed and the roll and everything else like that. So when you're trying to maintain those things, very hard to focus. So most companies encourage you to use all available automation as much as possible, because it reduces your workload and it allows you to manage the flight and not deal just with flying the airplane, but with everything that goes with it. So watching the weather up ahead, planning the destination, dealing with abnormalities, even just managing the systems in a complicated airplane like this. So in general, airlines want you to have the autopilot on most of the time, because then it takes the workload off you, and it allows you to do things more accurately and be a little bit more ahead of the airplane instead of just flying where the airplane is right now. You can be thinking ahead of what the next step is. The other thing too is flying the autopilot generally, and I'll say this generally, allows more precision. You know, pilots are prone to making mistakes, even looking away for a second while you confirm a radio call or confirm that he's putting in the right altitude, and you look down and the airplane started to drift a little bit one way or the other, turn a little bit, or it's losing speed. So the idea is that the autopilot can fly the values you give it very precisely to, usually more precisely than a human being, and therefore it's more efficient, it's more accurate, so that you can fly a very specific track. You can fly an approach track, you can have other airplanes very close to you, and you're flying this track very closely. You're not worried about incurring the other aircraft so much. You can also fly it more efficiently, flying the ideal speeds that the FMS has determined are the best speeds for you to fly today. So in general, airlines want you to fly with the autopilot on, and that's just for a better situational awareness, better management, and also a more precise aircraft handling. That being said, hand flying an airplane is a skill like any other. The autopilot, like any other system in this airplane, can fail, and the autopilot in most cases does not have a backup. There's two channels, but in a lot of cases, a lot of designs, if one of the channels... Oh, yeah, there's transition. Standard set. Transition, standard set. Transition, set standard. I don't know, he'd respond to that anyways. Yeah, so generally the airline industry wants you to use the autopilot as much as possible, but yes, you need to retain those hand flying skills. A lot of aircraft, even though they may have two autopilot channels, usually oftentimes in many aircraft, if one of the channels fails, without the second channel to provide a monitor, to provide a backup to make sure the autopilot is doing what it's supposed to be doing, neither channel becomes available to use. So the autopilot becomes unusable. So it's one of those ones that it's a system that there is a perfectly good backup sitting right here on the flight deck for that system, and that is the pilots can fly it themselves. So the autopilot, often there's not as much redundancy as there is in other systems. The idea is that the autopilot fails, the pilots can still fly the airplane. They can still just take the controls and manage it manually. That being said, if you only fly the airplane for about 40 seconds per flight, 60 seconds per flight, up to 1,000 feet is maybe 30 seconds in most cases, and you know, the last couple hundred feet of your approach and landing, 30 to 60 seconds every time you go do a flight, you know, how many hours do you really log flying the airplane? You know, you're not even logging like 100 minutes a year actually flying the airplane. So the skills atrophy very quickly, and also the airplanes handle very differently when you're at higher altitudes too. So sometimes flying at higher altitudes, it's good to get that feel for an airplane and how it handles differently when it's a little higher versus when it's down low where the air is thicker. So a lot of airlines are now discovering this. This is a big issue and are adopting policies where, yes, we'd like you to use the automation wherever possible. However, we also recognize that hand flying is a useful skill that should be practiced periodically, assuming the conditions allow it. So you have a nice, beautiful VFR day, you have a departure that's not overly complex, you know, even the pilots look at themselves and say, yes, we're not too tired. Like, if I'm feeling tired today, fatigued perhaps, didn't get a great night's sleep last night, then I'll probably opt to use that autopilot to be a little bit more reliable. But under ideal conditions, a lot of airlines are recognizing, yes, it's a good idea to let the pilots hand fly periodically. So some different people will do it to different levels. You know, you may just do it to 3,000 or 5,000 feet. 10,000 is a common kind of, if I'm going to hand fly this departure, I'll fly it to 10,000 feet, and above 10,000 I'll put on the autopilot. Personally, I don't mind hand flying all the way up to cruise altitude. Once you get to cruise altitude in a jet, if you're in RVSM airspace, you are required to have the autopilot on when you're level in cruise in RVSM airspace. But you can fly it all the way to 36,000 feet, 34,000 feet, and until the point where you level off, it's perfectly acceptable to hand fly. And periodically I do that. You know, flying is a fun, relaxing activity. I do enjoy it a lot. I do enjoy hand flying. So, fortunately, a lot of airlines are becoming very, I won't say permissive, but they are recognizing the value in letting people do some hand flying. And yes, and the flip side of that is that if you are doing hand flying, a big part of it is the person you're with. Because when you do hand flying, most airlines have a very strict policy that if you're doing hand flying, you're doing almost nothing else. You're not even manipulating the guidance panel. Your hands are on the control column and the throttle quadrant. Is this thing low? It feels like it's at the low position. Yeah. Your hands are on the throttle quadrant, the control column. That's about it. Maybe the speed brake would be the other thing you would use. You're not going to be playing with the FMS whatsoever if you're hand flying. And in most cases, you're not even going to be manipulating the guidance panel. If you get an altitude, you say set 7,000, and the guy who's not flying will then set 7,000 for you. You know, select heading mode, like I did with the FO in this departure. I basically asked him to do everything that wasn't hand flying. The only thing I did was I gave myself the direct to Bugsy, because I can't have the FS2 crew actually do that. That's the one thing FS2 crew can't do, is they can't select. You can't name a point in the FMS and have them select direct to that point. But in the real world, absolutely, I would say, please select direct Bugsy. They do it, and I confirm it, execute, and then I'd ask them to select LNAV. So if you're hand flying, you are focused on the hand flying. You're not doing anything else. And the thing is, when you do hand fly, you put a lot of workload on the person next to you. So you have to have some trust in the person next to you. You also have to hope that guy next to you is not going to think you're a total jerk for doing hand flying and giving him a ton more work than he normally would have. Because yeah, if you're normally the guy in the right seat, he is pilot monitoring, he's working radios, flaps, and that's about it. And the pilot flying will be working the guidance panel if the autopilot's on. But if it's off, the guy in the right seat is doing flaps, radios, he's doing the guidance panel, he's doing the FMS, he's doing everything. Do I recommend FS2 crew? I absolutely do. I think it's a really good immersive experience. They've done a great job with it. It's not perfect in all respects. There are little flaws I notice here and there, things that don't work properly sometimes, and I think sometimes that's the fault of the aircraft SDK not allowing FS2 crew to fully interface with everything. And PMDGs are pretty good, but there are sometimes limitations to what they can do, what FS2 crew can access the airplane externally. But overall, it's really good. And even if you don't want to do like all the flows and everything, my gosh, just when it's a busy day, when you're flying to an FNO, and you've got a bunch of radio changes going, you're trying to configure the airplane, you're looking for traffic, and there's all sorts of things going on, how great it is to just be able to say flaps 5, and the guy puts down flaps 5. You say flaps 10, and he puts down flaps 10. You put gear down, and he does that. You can even get a select airspeed, select speed, whatever. You can even get them to change the radio, select 125.77 on COM 1, and he will change it for you. You still have to do the talking, but even just having, basically, it's a second set of hands in the flight deck that is voice controlled, voice activated. That's incredibly realistic, first of all. The idea of us desk pilots, as you said, flying these airliners single pilot is just ridiculous. There's so much going on in here, and it's not so bad on VATSIM on a quiet day, but you get like a realistic traffic load in VATSIM where you're working and you're working hard. It's too much for one person to do, and then have to look around and do all the switches, and have to move the flaps, and have to make sure that they make it to the 5D tent and not the 10D tent, and lights and everything. So it's very, FS2 Crew is great software, and it's funny because it's one of those things I thought was a little bit gimmicky when I first heard about it. When I first read about what it was and what it was supposed to do, and I thought, I'm not really, I don't think I'm ever going to use that. Boy, was I wrong. After I got the first 1 or 2 aircraft, I was hooked on the idea, and I have since outfitted my entire collection. I have all the FS2 crews for all the aircraft in my collection. Because it adds to the immersion. You have to brief this guy, you have to tell him what you're doing ahead of time. You have to talk to him and run the checklist in a realistic manner. You're not just reading them quietly to yourself. You actually have to say the items aloud correctly, and he'll even stop you. That's the other neat thing about FS2 Crew is, like, a lot of the times, if you go through a checklist item and you haven't done it properly, he'll say, "Are you sure?" And it's a bit condescending, but it's funny because it's like, you know what? I didn't actually do that. I didn't finish the descent briefing or the approach briefing or something. So it's funny to hear him say those things, but no, it adds a huge level of immersion. It's extremely helpful when you're having a busy day in the flight deck. And it also adds some neat external components as well. Like, I do enjoy the radio calls that they make for, not the radio calls, but like the interface for, the flight attendants coming up to ask for boarding. It's kind of a neat thing to remind me, okay, this is the time we start boarding. And dealing with the ground crew, hey, cockpit to ground, can you disconnect the external power? Normally you don't go into a menu in PMDG in the FMS and say disconnect external power. You talk to a guy outside the airplane and ask him to disconnect the external power. So I really like there's all sorts of different aspects, and that's another one that I really like, is the fact that you can get things to happen outside the airplane using your voice, not just clicking buttons. If I could find a way to now sort of integrate GSX and make GSX a little bit less where I have to hit the menu and select what gate I'm going to and all that other stuff, if I could find ways to automate that a little more, I would love that too. Because a lot of the stuff that we have to do in the sim sometimes to make the sim function is not stuff you have to do in the real world, or it's not stuff you certainly would do by hitting menus and typing buttons in the FMS. You just simply would, call for it. You make a radio call to your operations department if they don't have a catering truck there. That would be neat. Dial in the dispatch number, request catering, request fuel, and then that would activate the GSX, and send that stuff over. That's actually a really interesting suggestion. I never really thought that much about it, but that would be a great way to handle it. If GSX could have like a voice activated component where you could dial in a specific frequency, your company ops frequency, and then just say out loud, request fueling, request catering, ready for boarding, request pushback. To do those things with voice again, just add a huge. FS2 crew can handle the doors on the airplane as well. That is usually an option in most FS2 crews. The NGXu I here is a pretty complicated one. I don't know if there's even an option to turn it off, but I think it's in here somewhere. Interface, no. Callouts, no. Miscellaneous. Here it is, yep. FS2 crew controls jetway, yes. This one sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. FS2 crew controls doors, yes. So you can decide if you want that to happen. I like it. I like the doors to open and close automatically without me having to say anything, because that's not the way it happens. Or that's the way it happens in the real world. The captain doesn't come out there and shut all the doors himself. the most you get is usually for the front door, the flight attendant will come in and ask, are we okay to close the door? Once you've confirmed the boarding's done, and the fueling's done, and maintenance is done, and everybody's done, then you turn around and say, yes. Check. Then you turn around and you say, yes, good to close. So I do like that it handles the doors. FS2 crew takes a lot of things that you normally would not handle as a captain and does those things for you, and maybe interacts with you verbally. Not all the GSX functions, I wish, but most of the aircraft handling functions, so things like moving the boarding along and then closing the door, doing external power. I think there's ways to get the air cart on and off. I'd have to look at the documentation. But I mean, the one that I found that was always annoying, and it wasn't annoying, but I found just unrealistic, that I had to go into a menu and say, disconnect GPU, boop, 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 instead of just calling out and saying, flight deck to ground, please disconnect the GPU. That's how it's done in the real world. So, you know, if you're ever thinking about it, right now, first of all, I think FS2 Crew's having a sale on Sim Market right now. I think you can buy all their, or maybe not all, but a bunch of their products at 50% off. So if you're thinking about it, like I said, I highly recommend it. And you can always try one and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, then you're only stuck with one. But I think once you try one, you'll find you're hooked. That's what I found. I was hooked once I had tried one out. There we go. We're leveling cruise. We got the seat belts are off. We're looking good. The other thing, actually, and I'll just mention this, completely unrelated to FS2 Crew per se, but I did notice for all of you guys out there watching, if you're interested in a pilot's life at all, a pilot's life is on sale right now on Sim Market as well for, I think it's down to 11 something euros. Absolutely, totally worth it for that price. Absolutely. So if anybody's watching this video, watching the stream, and thinking about getting a pilot's life right now, it's on sale on Sim Market for 11 euros. I think that's 30 or 40% off the normal price. I think it's about 30% off the normal price of 16 euros, but totally worth it. This is some of the most engaging software I've used in a while. I can't stop wanting to use it. I almost want to set up a second career in parallel to my streaming career just for fun. Which EFB are you talking about? Are you talking about like the Sim server EFB? Because that's another one that is, if you're thinking about getting like an EFB on your tablet, that's another one that adds a huge level of immersion. I use it more when I'm not streaming. In the stream, I tend not to use it too much because I know you guys are watching and you can't see what I'm doing on my desk down here with my tablet. But for just the Aviasoft EFB. Oh yes. That I can't say if that's worth it because I've never really used it, honestly. I have another friend who uses it and he likes it a lot because the amount of stuff that you can do in that is simply phenomenal. And he showed me a few demos of it, and it looks really fun. Right now, I'm in a big spending pause anyways, personally. Pretty much once the date of the new Flight Sim 2020 was announced, I went into spending pause. I was like, okay, you know, it looks like this is actually happening. This is really, the software is really coming out. It's not just going to be pretend software that's going to be announced, and it's not going to happen for a year or two. So I put a big spending pause on right now. The only thing I would consider spending money on would be things that are completely sim version independent. So things, utilities like perhaps a pilot's life, where most likely it'll be usable in the next thing. I would consider buying that. Anything that will be usable in Flight Sim 2020, I would still consider spending money on. So the other thing I would usually consider at this point now also is hardware. But certainly in terms of software, in terms of airports, aircraft, I put a total freeze on spending right now until we see what's put a total freeze on spending until the new version comes out and I see what's available for that. I probably, honestly, will not probably get any more airports or scenery for this sim. If the new sim is as good as we all hope, and more importantly, it's not so much if the new sim is as good, but if the airplanes start coming to it. The airplanes really are what you come to the sim for. The scenery is great, but it's a background behind the airplane itself. So I'm hoping that most of the airplanes that we know and love in P3D will make it into the new platform. And that'll probably be what I save my pennies for, first of all, because the new platform looks pretty good right off the bat. So it's funny because where we're heading today, Fort Lauderdale, LatinVFR Fort Lauderdale, was the last scenery that I purchased before the release date was announced, and that it may well stand as the last scenery that I have purchased for P3D. I'm hoping that a few of these developers at least will give us upgrade routes. And I think it's going to vary from developer to developer. Some developers seem more inclined to do it than others. They really do. But I'm hoping that most developers will feel inclined to say, you know, and I understand, like, the developers have to make a living as well. I totally get that. I'm not trying to disrespect anything the developers do. I realize they've got to make a living. They've got to, you know, they've got to cover their own costs, and it costs money to implement scenery and to change it over to a whole new platform. So I'm hoping that most of them, to me, I hope that they will all recognize that it also depends on the workload. When you see what's involved with getting into the new sim, if you have to build like all new models from scratch of all your buildings and redo all your textures from scratch, and everything basically has to be done from scratch, then you know, I feel like you're justified to charge a full price and not necessarily have an upgrade path fee where people can upgrade for less than the full price because they've supported you in the past. But if you're able to reuse a lot of what you've done in the past, and this includes the research too, because the research phase is a big phase of what you're doing when you're developing an airport, a scenery, or whatever. So so for scenery especially, like if you're able to reuse some of the base models, maybe you need to tweak them a little bit and improve them, and probably need to improve the quality of the textures. But if you can keep a lot of the base models, I would hope that you'll recognize that if we didn't have to put the full amount of time that it takes us to develop a new airport into porting the airports into the new sim, I hope you'll respect your users and you know, your customers, and say, in recognition of the fact that you already paid for Fort Lauderdale in version 5, and now we're going to bring Fort Lauderdale into Microsoft Flight Simulator, we're going to charge you half the price because we already have the models done. You know, we had the textures. We have textures that were good enough that we just had to just reskin things and realign things, but you know, recompile things in the new sim. I'm hoping that a lot of our developers will do that, because I have a huge library of scenery that I have spent some money on, and I would hate to think that all of that is a sunk cost at this point. And sorry, I don't actually use an EFB. My mistake. I was thinking FMS, so I don't actually use a separate EFB other than what's in the airplanes. I have my work tablet, which serves as my FMS, but also I'm not allowed to install any apps on it, but there is Safari on it. Let me just pull it up here. If I can just show you what I do here sometimes. So I have my FMS here. Because I just run in the Safari browser, what I can also do, of course, is I can have Navigraph charts just in browser. If it remembers me. There it is. And I can use that as my EFB. So I'll do that. I won't, yeah. I'll use that as my EFB. I don't have like a dedicated EFB like the AbleSoft EFB. Again, something else that I find like I don't think I need, but convenient to have in one location. The trouble now too is that this is a problem that a lot of airlines are finding with the whole EFB concept, is that by replacing everything you have with one tablet, you're creating two problems. One, you're creating a single point of failure, where if you lose one of these tablets for some reason, the battery dies, or you know, the operating system just hangs and decides not to boot up one day. Hopefully you've got one on the other side of the airplane to use. But the second thing is that you only have one place where all the information for your flight is located. And if there's one thing that really bugs me, it's trying to task switch in a tablet. And they're not, you know, Microsoft Windows and you know, the like full size computers generally work very well for multitasking, because you can have multiple things side by side on the screen. But tablets, usually the way they're designed, especially EFBs, you can only have one thing on the screen at a time. You can have the tablets up. Well, great. What if I want to compare the runway length to the takeoff performance? Great, I got to go into the takeoff page, go do all that, bring the numbers back out. Another big example, big problem that we run into all the time is when you're going to an airport. That's got a lot of construction going on, and let's say I want to draw on my tablet, because a lot of tablets you can draw on them on the charts. Let's say I want to just kind of mark down all the taxiways that are closed. The trouble is, like, if I have my flight plan in the same tablet as my charts, very awkward to switch between and say, okay, this taxiway is closed. Okay, switch back to the airport chart, draw on the airport chart. Okay, switch back to the flight plan. Okay, what's the next taxiway that's closed? So for this is one of the biggest, I think, drawbacks of the EFB. It's really nice to have a lot of stuff in one place, but it can also be a big problem if there's too much stuff in one place, because it's hard to compare the information side by side. I found this was a huge problem for myself personally when I started my current job, where the company issued everybody an iPad and said, all the documents you need are on here, study this. Anybody who's ever tried to study off an iPad will acknowledge what a horrible, horrible strain that is, first of all. Just in terms of eye strain, I'm looking at that screen non-stop with the high contrast black on white, and oh my god, after the first hour or two, well, maybe after the first 3 hours, you're ready to shoot yourself before you look at another page on this tablet. But the other problem with it as well is cross-referencing different documents is really tough when you're working on an iPad or any other kind of tablet. Very hard to, again, switch back and forth easily between multiple documents. The previous job I'd had, they gave us all paper manuals when we started. They gave us a huge stack, and it I showed up at a doctor's appointment that I had to go to on the second day of my ground school, and I had my bag with me and 40 pounds of documents. The doctor's never going to forget how many pounds of documents I had that I was studying that first time. So, but the nice thing about that was I could spread them out on my dining room table. I could compare the aircraft manual to the SOP. I could compare the SOP to the operations manual. So I could compare these various documents. I could have the pages open and I could sort of look at all three of them at the same time, or however many documents I want to at the same time on my dining room table. Very easy to sort of scan between three different documents that way. When you have stuff on a tablet, it's not easy to scan between multiple documents. So that was another big disadvantage of having the tablets. Great to store everything in a very small place. I'll gladly acknowledge that the tablet weighs less than a pound. I was lugging around 40 pounds worth of books at my previous job. This tablet weighs like a pound, not even. So, that's great. You can take it almost anywhere. You can study small amounts instantly. But for the hardcore studying you do when you join an airline the first time, you've got hundreds, thousands of pages of manuals that you've got to learn about, and they're interrelated. So, but you can't study them. If you have them on a tablet, you can't sort of look at 2 or 3 of them at the same time. You're restricted to kind of looking at one and paging through one at a time, and it's very awkward. So I really missed that with the tablet. I ended up printing out a few documents, a few of the shorter documents, just to have as a reference when I first started, just to make it easy, make the studying go a little bit easier, to be able to cross-reference things. Tablets are not the silver bullet that solves all the problems of the flight deck, of paperwork on the flight deck. They have helped a lot, and they have made some certain things easier, but the more you try to do with them, the more awkward it becomes to use them. So there's a limit to what can realistically be done, I think, with a tablet. Anyways, we're sailing along here. Let's have a quick status update here. Progress 17:14. We're not doing too bad here. And it's just over 2 hours from now. We're going to be in Fort Lauderdale. I'm just going to have a quick look at my VATSIM on my other window here. There's not too much going on right now. Below us there are some New York controllers online, some ground, some approach controllers. No center controllers until we get down to Jacksonville right now. Jacksonville came online an hour and 42 minutes ago. Chances are by the time we get there, which won't be for another hour and a half, they'll be gone as well. But we'll keep our eyes open for ATC that's on there. What else to talk about? Something else that I just noticed just rolled on my rolled into my stream just this morning, and I thought it was really interesting. Parallel 42, makers of Chase Plane, as well as a whole bunch of immersion packages, have rolled back their prices, permanently rolled back their prices on most of their software. They participated, I guess, in the Fly July event, and they had some sale prices on a bunch of their stuff, and they realized through, I guess, talking to their customers and dealing with these sales, that there's a sweet spot in the sim market for selling software. And apparently it comes in around the 20 US dollar range. If you get much above 20 US dollars, people really start to think twice about a purchase, but people feel like they get good value around the 20 US dollar range. So they decided to roll back the price on almost all of their products to $20 US. All their immersion products are back to $20 US. The only thing that they held up a little higher was Chase Plane. I think it's $34 US, which is still a price reduction of about 30%, I believe, from what it was before. So even Chase Plane, they rolled it back. They said they did a cost benefit, and they said that selling more copies at the lower price will probably net them at least the same amount of revenue, if not more. So that's not something you hear about very often in this world, I gotta say. PMDG has solidly pushed the trend in the other direction. Every single iteration of a PMDG airplane costs $10 to $20 more than the iteration before it, I swear. Not counting sales prices and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting to see a developer that has rolled back their prices permanently and said, you know what, we think our products maybe are priced a little bit high for the market, and we'd like to bring them down to a price that the market will bear. Just kudos, first of all, to Parallel 42 for recognizing that. And, you know, everything is worth only what people will pay for it, first of all. That's true of commerce in any industry, in any field. A product is only worth what somebody's going to pay for it. That being said, the ethereal market of software that is copied freely is a little bit harder to deal with in terms of finding pricing points, because there's a large upfront development cost that goes into software. You know, basically almost all the cost of software usually does go in upfront. I won't say it's all. I realize there is, you know, maintenance patches and upgrades and whatnot, so it's not completely devoid of back-end cost, but the vast majority of the cost of any kind of software development happens at the front end before it's ever released. Ask Asobo what they probably spent on flights in 2020, but any scenery developer, any aircraft developer, they spend all their money before the first release, pretty much, and then they get little to no revenue until the release. So and of course on the other side of that equation too is the fact that copying software is essentially free. And I don't mean that in an illegal piracy sense, but I mean that in the sense that when you distribute copies of your software, it costs you pretty much almost the exact same amount to distribute 100 copies as it does to distribute 1,000. So how much do you charge for an item that doesn't have a minimum production cost per item, where all the production was in making the original template that everything's copied? How do you deal with that? That pricing software is a very hard thing to do sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's not so much about how much was invested in making it, it's about how much you think the end product is worth and how much users will be willing to pay for the end product. That's what really software pricing comes down to. So it's very easy to overprice, underprice, totally be off base on a price of software. I think the one thing in the flight sim market is that people generally look around and compare their software to other similar software, and there's sort of a uniform consensus on what an aircraft, what scenery should cost. Now, aircraft maybe not so much, there's quite a wide range, but scenery-wise, there is generally a consensus on what one airport scenery should cost. And there is some range, some variability in that, again, and I think that also comes down to the level of detail put into the sceneries. Absolutely does, but there's a general range. Then when there's people who are outliers, especially top-level outliers, people who are charged way more than most of the other scenery developers normally charge, they really stand out, and people, and I personally chafe against them. It depends. I mean, you've got for me to justify spending a lot more money than the typical scenery, you've got to really justify it to me in terms of what am I getting for that price. much higher price. There's one developer, I don't want to name them, but they tend to charge a really high amount for single airport sceneries, like 40 to 45 euros per airport scenery, and I'm thinking to myself, this is just ridiculous. Nobody, some of the best detailed scenery in the world doesn't cost that. The Fly Tampas and the FS Dream Teams are around 30 euros or less anyways. So for someone to be crossing the 40 euro boundary for single airport scenery, even there's VATSIM, they don't even charge that much, but when they do, I don't mind paying it, because usually you're getting 3 to 4 or 5 airports. You're not just getting one airport. They do a whole bunch of airports in a region. So if they charge maybe $5 or $10 more than the typical developer, I don't mind that. Sim add-ons. Name names. I don't want to name the name because I don't want to call them out, but I just think it bugs me. This one developer that just they charge like 45 euros per 40 euros per airport, and their airports are not even that good. Had to look at the screenshots. They're not a whole. They're better than just freeware, but they're not a whole lot better than freeware. They're no FS Dream Team, that's for sure. They're no Fly Tampa, and the fact that they want to charge that much, I balked. I won't spend that money. But I just think it's interesting though, from the perspective of this is what the market will bear, and the standard has sort of been set just by what everyone charges, what every developer charges for airports now. For the higher end airports, most people don't mind paying into the 20 to 30 euro range. For kind of and I hate to say lower end airports, but the ones that obviously don't get as much texturing, as much object detail, sub 20 euros, people are okay with paying that. Can you link links if I don't name names? It's the same deal. I just find it funny. So I'm so happy that Parallel 42 set a trend to roll back some prices. And it's not something you see very often in the software industry, people rolling back a price unless they really think they overcharge. Yeah. I thought that was interesting. It's not too often you see that make the news. Hey, we rolled back the price on our software. So I was happy to see that. I was very happy to see that. I'm just the other thing I have noticed come up a lot now, especially on the FS Elite stream now, there seems to be a bit of a surge in releases right now. There was kind of a quiet period for a while there, being the summer. There's now like a real surge in releases of software, airports and stuff, and a lot of it seems to be just trying to sort of release some stuff just before the new sim comes out. I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but PMDG is having a sale. 23 years in business, so they're having a 23% off sale. Conveniently ends 4 days before the new sim comes out. Not that I necessarily think their new products are going to be out right away anyways, but it seems like a lot of people are trying to get like a last hurrah of sales out of releases and sales out of the P3D platform before everybody starts moving, because that's about 50% of the news now is who's working on what for Flight Sim version or Flight Sim 2020, and it seems like a lot of stuff is in the pipeline already. I saw Flightbeam announce that Denver is going to be their first airport, which is great. I like their Denver; it's really good. That's going to be, I'm assuming, I haven't even read this, but I assume that FS 2020 supports sloping runways, and Denver's another airport where sloping runways add huge to the character of that airport. It's a huge airport. The runways, the whole airport, they tried to pick the flattest area they could, but it's on the foothills of the mountains, so there's a lot of slopes in that airport. Their existing P3D Denver does a good job of kind of capturing the spirit of that, but sloping runways I think will be huge in Denver, so I can't wait to see what they do there. Aerosoft said that they are definitely coming out with the RJ. I'm assuming they're bringing the bus as well. They've also confirmed that they will continue to develop for X-Plane and P3D as well. But yeah, they are. The CRJ is well underway. No free upgrades from existing products for Aerosoft, which is fine. I would not expect a free upgrade. I would never really. I'd be grateful for any that I would get, but I would never expect a free upgrade to Flight Sim 2020 because it looks just phenomenal. And I'm sure that the sim is very different from what the previous platforms were, so there's going to be lots of things. But discounted upgrades I'm hoping for from a lot of developers anyways. Durzwiecki said they said they're working on some stuff. FS Dream Team previewed O'Hare. I think they previewed O'Hare and what was it, Euro Airport, I think. So that now it seems that half of the news is dropping is just people talking about what they're working on next for Flight Sim. Yeah, FS Dream Team shared O'Hare previews. Milviz is working on bringing lots of stuff over. FS Dream Team also previews, yeah, Euro Airport, Basel, Mulhouse. So lots of previews are coming up. I'll be curious to see what's out right away. Any recommendations for newbies? Wow, what an open-ended question. If you're getting into the platform at this point, if you haven't invested money in P3D, I would say sit and wait for Flight Sim 2020 because I think that's going to be software that everyone's going to want to get their hands on. So, any recommendations for newbies? That's such an open-ended question right off the bat. The best way I can put this is what software would I want to see first in Flight Sim 2020? And I don't even know. I think the first thing I would like to do is I would like to see a really good airplane. I think the first thing I would like to see is a really good airplane. So one of the high-end add-ons like the NGXu, I'd like to see that released, or one of the other high-end airplanes. I can't even think what I would recommend for like a first thing you'd want to invest. Because it depends on what you want to get out of the sim too. It's such an open-ended platform. You can do so much with a simulator that you can have you can do small general aviation flying. You can literally do your flying lessons in the sim and learn how to fly an airplane right from nothing and learn properly in the first order. You can hop right in and start flying airliners. It does take a steep learning curve to learn to fly some of these airliners. That's where I think FS2 Crew also can help. It's such a useful tool for doing half the work for you in these airliners that it can be very good for getting you started in some of these airliners. If you're getting started in the simulator, I would recommend starting out like a real pilot. I would recommend probably starting out with some of the smaller airplanes and learning to fly them well. And I highly recommend, first of all, I highly recommend joining VATSIM because I think there's a lot to be learned and added from learning to fly, interacting with real people as controllers, not just sim controllers, but real people controllers. And it's free, so it doesn't cost you anything to ever join VATSIM. You can learn so much from VATSIM right off the bat. So I highly recommend checking out VATSIM. Because it's free, it doesn't cost you anything to join. You learn a lot by listening, so even if you don't take off the first time you log into the network and you just find a controller that's got a few airplanes around and you just tune in the radio and just listen for the first little while, that's a great way to learn. You may want to consider joining a virtual airline as well, because virtual airlines often will have a lot of resources available to help teach people in the beginning. Different virtual airlines will do different things for you. Some are very, try to simulate realistic flight patterns, assume you have a lot of skills. Some kind of will teach you right from very low skill levels. So to get started in flight simulation, I don't even know where to suggest to start. There's so much out there. If you've already got your sim picked, there's tons of free stuff out there. Find an airplane that you like, and I would recommend learning that one well in the beginning. yeah, there's a pilot training website on VATSIM, and there's pilot training websites everywhere. This is the thing, like, there's so much information out there, I can't suggest any one resource. Again, depends on what you want to do with your flying. If you want to, you know, learn how to fly airliners and fly around from you know, major airport to major airport, then I highly recommend, first of all, VATSIM, because you can get that realistic ATC. There's a few good airplanes. In terms of learning, though, the more modern airplanes are usually easier. So you're talking about the 777, even the 47, the 87, you know, the Airbus. Those airplanes are easier. The Boeing 737, the Mad Dog MD-80, the Dash 8 Q400, those airplanes are harder to learn because there's a lot more manual systems control in those ones. There's a lot more satisfaction when you get done, but if you're especially new to airplanes, simpler airplanes are better. So usually the newer airplanes. The 777 is a fairly easy airplane to fly. The 47 is fairly easy to fly as well. And the Airbus products are also fairly user-friendly, fairly easy to fly. Yeah, or the other side of that is fly some light GA airplanes, some Cessnas, or Cessnas, Cirruses, Diamonds, whatever you might be able to find in your simulator. But the smaller airplanes are usually, they're also slower too, which makes things happen a little bit slower, makes things a little easier. I hope I'm helping anyways. Yeah. Start off simple, don't try to bite off too much in the first when you're starting out. So just go, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of money on default airport or on payware airports. Start out at some default airports, take some simple airplanes up, learn to fly them. The NGXu, I'm a real world pilot, so I can put my real world experience into this, and I don't mind getting into some of these complex airliners. I enjoy them. There's some joy in being able to operate them. But yes, when you're a relative rookie at flying, yeah, you definitely want to start out with simpler things, so simpler airplanes. I'll tell you the one airline that I do enjoy flying for, I'll plug them now, because they do have a fairly extensive training document area as well, is Canadian Express. If you look for Canadian Express out there and find their website, they do have quite a bit of training documentation that you can sort of read on how to fly different things, how to select aircraft, and they got a whole bunch of different things. So it's a very low-key airline that you only have to fly an hour every 6 months or something like that. You only have to fly once every 6 months. Yes, you can absolutely sink way too much money into this hobby, but you don't have to. There's a lot of freeware material out there. There's also another great scenery if you're in FSX or prepared, called was it freewarescenery.com, I think. FSX freeware. I forget what it's called. Hold on, let me find it here. But there is lots of. It's just called freewarescenery.com. If you're in the FSX or P3D world, and it's basically a collection of links to sorted out by country to all sorts of freeware out there, all different levels. Some of it's really good, some of it's pretty cheap looking, but there's lots of freeware out there, so you don't have to spend a lot. You definitely kind of want to learn before you spend a lot. You want to see if it's something you're going to be interested in the long term too. That I think is my best advice. So, you know, once you've bought the sim itself, go out there, play with it a little bit, take advantage of the free things you can get your hands on. Freeware scenery. Free airplanes usually are not terribly great because they are based on the models, which are pretty rudimentary within the sim. But certainly freeware airports are usually good enough to do the job in the beginning. Take advantage of free ATC on VATSIM. Join an virtual airline. They're usually all free as well. There's a lot of stuff you can do for free. There's a lot of great software that's available for free, and there's a lot of good demos out there even that you can download the demos and try stuff out and see what works for you, what doesn't. I'm trying to think what else is available for free. Sim Toolkit Pro is free. You can donate if you want, but it's free. It has all sorts of useful tools when you're flying around, moving maps and flight planning capabilities, all sorts of great tools. You can usually get charts for free online, especially if you're flying in North America. So yeah, you can spend a ton of money in this hobby, but you don't have to. Definitely learn for free. learn if you're going to like it for free before you start dropping amount of money. I'd say if you're going to spend money, probably the first thing you want to spend money on is a decent airplane. There are good airplanes at all ends of the spectrum too. If you're looking for, Majestic's Q400 is not cheap, but it's a really great airplane to fly. It's pretty forgiving because it's a turboprop, so it's a little bit more forgiving than a jet. It's a little slower, a little more maneuverable than a jet, but it's still a pretty advanced airliner. Even if you're dealing with, like I said, if you want to fly low and slow and do some general aviation stuff, A2A Simulations has some great general aviation airplanes that are very highly detailed that you will you can learn to fly. The systems are great. Navigraph's a good way to sink a lot of money. Yes, it is. Let's not even go to Navigraph. A beginner doesn't necessarily need to be using Navigraph. They can make use of outdated charts. Most places around the world too. You can get charts for free. That's a nice thing too. You can get charts for most places around the world for free if you search the internet. Either the virtual airlines and virtual air traffic control facilities will have links to free charts, but there are free chart services out there. Flightplan.com, FLTPLAN.com, flightplan.com has all you have to do is register. It's free to register, and as long as you're registered, you can access American and Canadian approach plates for free. And they're the up-to-date plates. They're the current plates. They're not outdated or anything. I'm glad I helped. I'm glad I helped if I gave you some things to check out. I think, yeah, the first thing you're going to want in a sim is probably a good airplane. You can make do with like lousy default airports as long as you've got a nice airplane that operates somewhat realistically. If you're serious about getting into this hobby, a yoke is going to be essential before you get too far into it. I couldn't believe how long I went without having a yoke before I finally got my hands on a yoke. And it just sort of changed my life. It's like, wow, it suddenly really went from like feeling like a game, playing with a gamepad, to wow, this actually feels realistic. Hardware-wise, a yoke is something you want to get early on more than anything else. And the Saitek one is, you buy it for about $200. I think it's about $150 US, $220 Canadian, something like that. The Saitek one is totally great. It's totally good for a starter yoke. It's not the highest quality product in the world. It'll probably wear out eventually, but it's a great starter set, and it'll get you going for the first few years anyways if you're really into this. Yeah, that's funny to think about. Like I've been at this now for quite a few years, and to think of all the software that I just take for granted because I purchased it so long ago. I don't even think about the stuff anymore. Things like Chaseplane, active sky weather outside the window, real-time active sky weather, GSX, FS2 crew. Like, these are all things that I just take for granted that I have all the time now. Yeah, it's funny, those things that you take for granted after a while. Other things that are kind of fun once you've gotten into the sim a little bit, if you want to go on missions. Again, stuff like career simulators. So A Pilot's Life is one example. That's a great career simulator. Really kind of, if you're at the airline level. If you want to fly at the airline level, it's a great career simulator. Other ones I've checked out in the past, Air Hauler 2, I guess now, was, if you're more at the low end of things, it's a great mission driver, if you will, mission creator. Air Hauler 2 is basically, you start out with a cargo hauling company, and basically you start out with usually you can afford to buy one airplane in the beginning. It's usually not a very fast airplane, and so you're just going to small airports nearby, but it just generates jobs for you. You pick the job you want to do, and then you can fly to those airports. But the really neat thing about Air Hauler, and one of the real reasons it was originally designed, was it goes into your sim and it accesses the database of all the airports in your sim, and that's what it uses to generate the cargo load. And you end up flying to tiny little airports that you would never have ever considered, dropping off cargo and picking up more cargo. So it's really neat in that respect, that it really kind of, and that was its original design goal, was to get you exploring the airports within the sim. The P3D platform, I think, has something like 12,000 airports within the sim, and most people fly to a small fraction of those. They fly to the same like 2 dozen or 3 dozen airports over and over again, and I'm probably guilty of this too right now. But there's literally hundreds and thousands of little dirt strips out there everywhere that you could check out. So Air Hauler 2 sort of forces you to check them out by sending you to all these small little fields. So if you are interested in getting sort of a mission-driven, you know, once you've kind of flown around, you've gotten used to flying airplanes, you have an idea of how to fly airplanes. You don't even have to pay for it if you want another excellent freeware, and I totally didn't even think about this, FS Economy. FS Economy is a freeware system that's kind of in the same vein as Air Hauler. It's not a software you download, it's a website-based economic simulation, but it's like a multiplayer simulation. So you know, you create an account on FS Economy, and you basically are given a small amount of money to start out with. You have to rent airplanes from the economy, or buy airplanes when you have enough money eventually, and you make money by hauling passengers and cargo around, and it just creates constantly randomized database of jobs that are available for you. You take the job, you fly it in the sim, you deliver it, you get money on the website, and you slowly build up your account. Yeah, if you're interested, FS Economy is targeted at the lower end airplanes again, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in smaller aircraft. It's targeted at the piston engine aircraft, maybe the small turboprops, business jets at the very biggest. If you don't fly airliners in FS Economy, but you fly smaller aircraft around, it's great if you've got some turboprops, you know, some small business aircraft. FS Economy is great. It's free. It's totally free to join, and it again can give you a sense of purpose. So once you've flown the sim for a little while, and if you're lacking that sense of purpose, FS Economy is great for giving you that sense of purpose. Very similar to Air Hauler. Air Hauler is a little nicer interface because it's downloaded software that you're running on your computer, but FS Economy is great because it is a multiplayer environment. The other thing, if you really want to get into this, is you'll want to find a way to meet some people to hang out with and share your enthusiasm with. There's tons and tons of great organizations where you'll meet people. VATSIM is one great way to meet people, meeting other pilots and people doing ATC, joining a virtual airline and hanging out with people in a virtual airline. This hobby, why did I say this job? This hobby is much more fun when you're doing it with other people. I love streaming because I enjoy chatting with other people as I fly and showing them what I'm doing as I'm flying, although right now it's pretty boring. I keep looking out the window, but now I'm mostly focused on talking to you guys here. Sailing down here past the end of Long Island. I think that's at the end of Long Island, or is this or are we down at the end of New Jersey here? I think we're at the end of New Jersey. I think that's Chesapeake Bay coming up there. I don't even know where we are anymore. Yes, VATCAN, yes. VATCAN's a great way to meet people. Any of the VATSIM networks, whatever, you know, learning to do virtual ATC or even just hanging out on their forums and being online is a great way to meet people. But I think that's one of the best ways to enjoy this hobby is with other people. So however you meet other people, and there's lots of different ways to do it. Like I said, virtual airlines, joining virtual ATC organizations, and then meeting together, flying online, sharing information, you know. That's another neat thing about FS Economy is you can set up airlines with membership with multiple employees. You can employ your friends. You can set up an airline where you employ your friends and you guys can all do missions together. You know, it's really great like that. I was doing it for a little while with some friends. I stopped having enough time to fly for it, but I miss it a little bit. Now I'm thinking about logging in and seeing how much my account balance is, which is probably pretty low. But that's okay. As long as you don't screw up too bad in FS Economy, you'll always make some money. It takes a while to make a lot of money, but you'll make money on most delivery jobs as long as you're not screwing up too badly. But yeah, I think that's probably my number one tip is go out there as well and meet some people. Join a virtual airline. You won't regret it. You'll meet tons of people out there. Whew. I feel like I've been talking for a while now. Yeah, that is the mouth of Delaware River we just passed. So, yeah, we're over Delaware right now, I believe. Yeah, I think I might step away for a little bit, guys. I'm really enjoying this conversation right now. I don't want to step away, but I feel like I might need a break. And Chris H says he recently purchased a Pilot's Life and is enjoying it. I'm glad to hear that. You know, I think it's really well done software. It's amazing how relatively simple the idea is, but it's quite well done, and I think there's still some things they could do to make it even better. I absolutely think that, but I don't think. But even in its current state, it's pretty fun. I can't help but just want to keep going with it. It really is the flight generator, the schedule generator. You know, working for the different and the selection of airlines available to you. The fact that when you work for an airline, it makes a pretty realistic schedule generation there. You know, and then you find deliveries for the airplanes that you're flying, for the airline that you're flying, and you feel like you have a real purpose, and that gives it a really neat dimension. So I hardly endorse a Pilot's Life. I think, especially on the sale price, it's on sale right now on Sim Market. If anybody again is watching that doesn't have it, it's on sale on Sim Market right now. Go grab it because it's totally worthwhile. It's a great piece of software. How are we doing here? We are getting there. So we are not quite halfway there. Let's check where we are here, live map. Not quite halfway. We're getting there though. Jacksonville's still online. I might have to step away for a few minutes just to refresh my coffee cup and everything else because I want to make sure I'm here when we get into Jacksonville's airspace just past Wilmington. There's still another probably 45 minutes at least till we get to Wilmington, I think. Let's see here, legs. Route data 1609 from 1531. 40 minutes. In 40 minutes we'll be in Jacksonville's airspace. Yep, the Pilot's Life is on sale right now. Unless actually it was on sale yesterday, I should say. I haven't checked today, but yesterday a Pilot's Life was on sale. Let's go to the website. It is still on sale, 30% off, 11.73 euros. If you're ever thinking about it, now is as good a time as any to pull the trigger. And I don't get a commission. I wish I did. I wish I got a commission for every Pilot's Life that was sold because I recommended it on this channel, because I probably have made about $5 by now. But definitely, I think there are at least a few people who have gone and bought it because they've watched this series and seen how much fun it is. So yep, it is there right now on sale, 11.73 euros, guys. So if you're thinking about it, it's no time like the present. And even if you're worried about the new sim, they did say a while back, I think about a month ago, that they were hoping to support Flight Simulator 2020. The key is that a Pilot's Life uses FSUIPC to interface with the sim. So as long as FSUIPC is set up to work for the new flight simulator. And I'm just trying to find, there have been multiple the one thing, actually, I will say right now is that I'm just reading some forum posts here. They do say they have an alpha version of FSUIPC, version 7, that is already accessible and usable by people who are in the Flight Sim Alpha. Now, this was posted about a month ago. So, he says still a lot to do. We're a bit surprised to release so soon. Currently getting very little feedback from Sobo and some no documentation, but they're working on it. So, for those of you that are thinking about getting a Pilot's Life, it is not, I won't say it's a certainty, but it is very highly likely that it's going to be supported by FS 2020. The key is that they will just have to wait until FSUIPC is updated to support FS 2020, which is going to probably not happen right away because the common complaint everyone has about Asobo and Microsoft right now is that the SDK is not well documented right now. And I feel like that's going to probably shift because of the amount of development that is going on by third-party developers, that they are going to be obligated to provide that that support, that documentation at some point. But right now I think they're of course focusing mainly on just getting it out the door at this point. So it looks like it's probably about, if I was to say, probably about a 95% certainty that a pilot's life will support FS 2020. Maybe not right away, but probably within hopefully the first few months. It's whenever basically the first version of FSU IPC comes out for FS 2020. That's when you'll probably be able to use a pilot's life with it, which is great. And that's great because a pilot's life's not the only thing that relies on FSU IPC. Of course, many of our favorite flight trackers rely on FSU IPC, so the fact that it will most likely exist in the new sim in a similar version to what it is right now probably will require very little rewriting of the software that then interfaces with FSU IPC. So a lot of your virtual airline trackers will probably work right away. Just trying to think what else interfaces with FSU IPC. I'm trying to think now. There's more than a few things. Lots of flight trackers and things like that use FSU IPC anyway, so it is a work in progress, so hopefully it will happen. I'm looking forward to trying out the new 321 in Flight Sim 2020. The other thing I think we're all going to be waiting for when FS 2020 comes out is repaints. Hopefully the painting community at large has got their mouse and keyboard ready to go to start putting real-world paint jobs back into Flight Simulator. Because I think that's another big thing. That's another big thing we'll miss right away. Is all these beautiful AI models. Not that there's anyone flying around anywhere near me right now. No, there's not even anybody within range where it says air traffic. But sometime soon there will be. But you take it for granted. You get the free AI traffic packs, from Fly AI or wherever you get them from, and it's another thing that you just take for granted once you've got it. You don't even think twice about it, and you kind of wish. These are the things you're going to notice are missing right away in the sim. It's like, oh, look, it's all like the yellow and the yellow, white, and aqua colored Airbus flying around or whatever that they had in the default in FSX back in the day. It's all we're going to see again. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes to get that updated. It's up to you, but I think the Pilot's Life software is very worthwhile. And I am planning, and this is a long way out right now, but I am planning and hoping one day when we hit 1,000 subscribers in my YouTube channel that we're going to have a small giveaway. I'm going to celebrate. We're rounding up pretty quickly. I think last check I had 883 subscribers. So we got just over 100 subscribers to go. When I hit 1,000 subscribers, which will probably be in the next 3 months or so, I'm planning on some software giveaways. I'm going to go really nicely and ask Simbit World if they'll give me a couple of licenses for Pilot's Life to give away, because I think that's been a huge contributor to this channel, and I'm sure that I have contributed to a couple of sales directly just from people watching this channel, at least a few. I don't know how many with any specificity, but I know that there have been at least a few people that have gone and bought it because they've watched this channel and think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go to them and hopefully ask for a couple of giveaways. The other software I'm probably going to look at is probably Majestic, just because I pushed the Dash 8 so hard for those first 2 seasons, and a lot of this channel is, of course, the system stuff. I'm going to ask if I can have a couple of licenses. I'm going to put in a request for a couple of licenses to give away. So I don't know what we're going to get. I don't know who's going to say yes to what. I'm hoping we'll get something, but I would like to have a giveaway. When my YouTube channel reaches 1,000 subscribers, there'll be some information on my channel about how to enter my giveaway and hopefully get yourself some software that you don't already have. Because I think that this channel has helped support a few of those developers quite a bit, and I'd also like to just give something back to all the people who have subscribed to this channel, because it's been a lot of people. I never thought when I started it, and now mind you, it was almost 3 years ago I started this channel, but I would never have thought when I started this channel that I would even come close to 1,000 subscribers. I was shocked when I got to 100. Never mind 1,000, and that's nothing in the YouTube world. It's nothing in the social media world. 1,000 subscribers is nothing, but to me it's something. Like I said, I never thought I would ever get to 1,000 subscribers. I started it just for interest, just to sort of put some information about the Dash 8 out there, because there was so much false information about the Dash 8 out there. So I decided to just do it just to sort of counter some of the misinformation that was out there. But the support over time has been overwhelming, and thank you guys so much for watching, because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think people were getting some joy out of it and hopefully learning something along the way. I certainly enjoy doing it, but I don't stream just to myself. I stream because I enjoy interacting with other people. I enjoy getting videos out there on my channel. So thank you guys for watching, and stick with me. Like I said, if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you are, because that's the platform where I'm going to give away some software when we reach 1,000 subscribers. It'll be a couple of months from now, but make sure you're on the channel, make sure you're subscribed, and you should hopefully get notified when that comes out. I don't know what form it's going to take. I haven't figured it out, but I know I want to give something back when we reach 1,000 subscribers. Alright, I think I've chatted for long enough for now. As I said, in about 25 minutes, I think, we're going to be entering Jacksonville's airspace. Where's my live map? In about 25 minutes, we're going to be entering Jacksonville's airspace, and I need to be here for that. Oh, there's air traffic. There's an AI model. Flying the other way. Flying right past me in the other direction, but... anyways. Yes, so I'm going to step away for about 25 minutes or so here, and then we'll come back to talk to Jacksonville and start setting up for arrival into Fort Lauderdale. This flight goes pretty quickly, so let me just do one thing really quickly here. I need this. And what time is it? So we're going to be back by, we're going to say about 16:05. We're going to be back here on the flight deck. So I'm going to go refresh my coffee cup and just check on a few things, but we will be back in a little bit. And there we go, 16:05. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stick around. Come back in 20-25 minutes. We'll start talking more about that flight simulator, because Microsoft is, it's getting exciting. Less than 2 weeks to go, and can't wait to see it out there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll be right back in just, as I said, about 25 minutes. See you then. You know, I almost feel like this is one of those scenes from Star Wars where the Star Destroyer just slowly comes into sight from the one end of the screen, from the top of the screen. Just slowly scrolling into sight there. Except that this is not nearly as big as the Star Destroyer. But anyways. Alright, we are back, and let's have a quick little look here at our live map here. And of course, the second we got close to Wilmington, there goes Jacksonville Center. Well, you can't blame a guy for trying. I think we're flying right over Wilmington right now. Let's get in the flight deck there. Alright, we got the fuel light here. We got a few cells off to our right there. And the fuel light right here. We got 30 kilos left in the tank there. So we'll go ahead and turn off the pump on the left that isn't working. But the right pump's still sucking a couple of kilos out of that center tank. We'll leave that until it runs dry as well. You don't want to run it too dry. You don't want them to run too long because they'll overheat if there's no fuel flowing through them whatsoever, because the fuel cools them. The fuel cools them. But we'd also like to suck as much fuel out of the center tank as possible. I don't think it's going to be too bad, but there is a chance of thunderstorms in Florida. But then again, there's a chance of thunderstorms in Florida, well, pretty much every day of the week. There's 20 kilos left in the center tank. So we can get it down to 10 at least. Yeah, there's thunderstorms in Florida every day of the week. I don't really know the difference. Alright, we're coming over Wilmington here. And we got a straight shot. I think we got about just over an hour until we land in Fort Lauderdale, right? 17:34, actually, we're showing for a landing at the Fort Lauderdale now. That was it. Top of descent is at 17:12, so top of descent is just an hour, essentially. So the question of the day now becomes really, and it's one that I'm grappling with, what platform should you purchase Flight Sim 2020 through? So now it's been announced that, of course I think everybody knows this, that it's being released on Steam as well as on Microsoft Store. So do you buy it through Steam or do you buy it through the Microsoft Store? My gut reaction is to buy it through Steam. And the reason is, I have a lot of stuff on Steam. I already have a Steam account. I don't even have an account on the Microsoft Store. I've never bought anything on the Microsoft Store. I don't feel inclined to make an account on the Microsoft Store. So my first reaction is to say no. Now that I have an option, and I was a bit disappointed at first to see that it was only on the Microsoft Store and I couldn't buy it through any other market vendor. So I think I'm going to go with Steam. The nice thing about Steam, it's a very mature platform. You know, it's here to stay, certainly for the foreseeable future anyway, so you're not going to lose access to your simulator. This is one thing that worries me. There, it's a little pressure. You know, we got almost no fuel left in that center tank. All right. Nope. And then we turned a little bit, and a little more fuel found its way to the pump. Yeah, I haven't decided, but I'm leaning towards Steam. But even Steam, like the idea of this whole buying software, so the low pressure light just keeps flashing on and off there. It's something that I've had to adapt to, I guess, because it's the way we distribute software, and there's a lot of advantage to the platform. But the whole idea of you know, all the games you own being controlled on a certain platform, it always, you know, it leaves me wondering a little bit in the back of my head, what will happen if one day Valve just goes out of business for whatever reason? And I'm not saying they're on the verge of it or anything like that, because they obviously are, you know, generating oodles and oodles of revenue. There's the fuel light. Is it going to stay on this time? Yeah, I think we've used up the last of the fuel that's in that tank, so we're going to go ahead and turn that pump off. Yeah, and that center tank is essentially empty. But I've always thought about that, you know, and this whole idea of software as a service. You know, that's not the way I grew up. I grew up with, you go to the store, you buy a box that has some discs in it, and you own a copy of whatever that is forever. You know, unless you happen to sell that copy or whatever, but you own those discs. I'm not saying you own the right to the software in perpetuity, but you know, as long as you have a working machine that can play that disc or whatever, then you have permanent access to that software. And the whole idea now that the, you know, software, you just don't own it. You just don't own anything anymore. All the companies just want to rent you your stuff now because they'd rather have the perpetual revenue rather than a one-time sale. But then it makes you wonder what happens if the company goes out of business. What happens to all those things you rented from that company if it goes out of business? You no longer have access to it. Man, imagine if Steam went out of business. And the Steam client stopped working the one day and stopped running your games. How many games would you suddenly lose access to? Like I haven't even spent all that much money on Steam, and I probably have 50 or 100 games in my library. Just think of how many people, some people have invested tons and tons of money. And what happens if Steam goes out of business one day and you lose the ability to play that? Now, any company, I would hope, any company that's in this business would have sort of an end-of-life game plan, perchance. And that's not something that anyone wants to really entertain, but just the idea that there is a way to unlock all your products should you decide one day, you end up going out of business. So, you download the last version of the Steam client, and it basically unlocks all your games, and it doesn't need to be logged in. Your games don't need to be logged in. You don't need to be online to activate all the games. And some companies have dealt with that. There have been a few companies in this flight sim niche that have dealt with that. There would be a lot of mad people. That would be the understatement of the year. There have been a few companies that have dealt with this, and I can't think of who it was now, but there was one in the flight simulator niche that basically announced that they were going out of business as a company. They were not going to be doing any more development, and what they did was they sent out a set of a software update to all of their products that basically unlocked all their products in perpetuity. So they didn't need to do a server activation check when they were installed anymore. They just simply were, you could download the executable and you could run it, and it was permanently unlocked. That to me is responsible software, developer ownership. We recognize that we were not able to keep it going, but people have already spent money on our products. We'd like the people who've already spent the money to be able to access their products in perpetuity. The one thing I will say about Steam, because it is such a huge worldwide network, if this were to ever happen, I think the one thing you can say is you can depend on the piracy community. There would be, somebody would come out with a fake Steam client that pretended to access the internet and authorize all your games, and, could then play all your games that you have installed at least. The other trouble with Steam, of course, is that you can have games in your library you don't have installed. If you don't have them downloaded, then you wouldn't be able to continue playing them. But I would imagine the piracy community would step up pretty quick and create a universal crack for Steam that just you could run it instead of the Steam client, and it would act like the Steam client. The games would think it was the Steam client, and they would still be executable. But still, the whole idea that your games, and I grew up 30 years ago. I grew up in an era where you'd go to a store, you'd buy a box that had a game in it, and you'd put it on your shelf, and you'd always have the original disc from that game. You'd make copies of it because it was always prudent to have a backup, but you'd always have the original copy to access that software. Certainly, as long as you own the computer, anyways, you'd have that software. But now, you don't own the software, and it's a double-edged sword. It's really nice because I don't have a whole wall of boxes in my computer room with all the stuff that I've bought over the years. That's a testament to the money I've wasted either. Doing it in the digital format also makes you less aware of how much your collection is worth, and if you see a whole stack of boxes on the wall, be like, well, each of those cost me like $45, so the 10, 20, 30, how much money have I spent? Holy shit. Whereas in your Steam library, you don't see a dollar sign associated with each thing you've bought. It's just there. But on the other hand, it is nice to live in the age of Steam where things are updated automatically. Steam has become such a great, relatively flawless service. The updates happen automatically in the background when you're not using your computer. They queue for when you're not doing things. You can even download the software in advance. You always have the latest version, so when the developer updates something and releases something, fixes a bug, you don't have to go log onto some bulletin board system, download one file and try to install it. Wait for a disk to get mailed to you. It's the day they release it is the day people can start updating it. So it's a great model in a lot of respects, but there's always that little nagging voice in the back of my head that says, are you going to have perpetual access to this afterwards? What happens? And I hope we never have to find that out. If I was to look at it from that perspective, which store has the greater chance of longevity, Steam or the Microsoft store? Microsoft as a company will probably still be around for a very long time, but I still think Steam, just because of this is their business, this is their only business. Microsoft, as much as they're a company that has been around for a long time, a lot of their services come and go, if you will, and the store is basically a service like any other. It can be shut down at a moment's notice one day if they're not making enough money off it. They've done that many times. Yes, that's the trouble with Steam. It's such a dangerously convenient place to be, and I stayed away from it for quite a while, and then I finally got suckered into it. And yes, it's so easy. You just click a couple of buttons. You don't even have any real, you don't even handle paper money anymore, so you have no concept of what you're spending. And this is another funny thing, like especially in the software world, we're buying everything digitally online. We have no concept of paper money changing hands anymore. Try to teach your children now about the value of money when they don't see you buy anything with paper cash anymore. I still remember my mother used to go to the grocery store and she'd pay cash for groceries when I was a kid, but who pays cash for groceries? And I mean, even pre-COVID, forget, COVID, but even pre-COVID 6-9 months ago, who paid cash for groceries, really? Let alone everything else. And obviously everything digital here, everything in the flight sim world and everything on Steam is all just digitally done. You have no association with that money you spend. You don't feel it leaving your wallet. Money has become a concept now. It's not a physical, tangible thing you can touch. It's just a concept, just some digits say, I have X amount of money and minus this, and now I have that. Yeah, what a weird change of events it is. Microsoft has given refunds on the products when online stuff is shut down. See, there's another interesting take on it. I feel Microsoft is more prone to shut things down, but if they give refunds, that's good. I don't want the refund. I want to continue having access to the product. That's what I want, I want, if I buy Flight Simulator tomorrow and download it on the 18th, I want to have access to it for as long as I want to use it. If I want to use it 10 years from now, I want to have access to it. And that's the trouble with the store installation models. At least with P3D, with Prepared, you download the executable. That version of the executable is on your hard drive. You can install it. That being said, you have to activate it with a license, so if the activation servers are not working properly, you may one day lose access to it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a conundrum. I think I'm probably reading way too much into some extreme outside possibilities. But at the same time, I'm going to drop a fair amount of coin on Microsoft Flight Simulator because I'm probably going to go for the deluxe edition right off the bat. So, I want to know that money's not going to go anywhere. If I had to wager on which is going to be more likely to be around in 10 years, Steam or the Microsoft Store, I'd bet my money on Steam. And 10 years seems like a long time in the technology business, but hey, look at it this way. FSX is a 14-year-old game now that really has only just been superseded by Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I mean, Prepared sort of came up as an alternative, but FSX users really did not have their sequel for a decade. So this is going to be software that you may well be using for another decade or so. See, that's the thing about Microsoft. Microsoft's such a big company, if they shut down one particular segment, it's not the end of the world to them. If they shut down their store, well, they're still making money off the operating system and the webs, the web hosting and everything else. So the store is probably a very small revenue slice, and they probably wish it was bigger, but I don't know. I don't like the Microsoft, like the universal platform apps on Microsoft, because I find they're very slow to start. And this is one thing that I really don't like about Windows 10 is that these universal apps in version 10 I tend to find are slower to start than standalone apps. I don't know why, but that bugs me. And ditto, especially for control panel is Microsoft settings now. All that stuff that's on like the Microsoft app level stuff. It takes so long to open. You're sitting there for like 15-30 seconds, and I know it's not this long, but 30 seconds staring at it, waiting for it to open and do something when you're trying to change a firewall setting or change your sound settings. And they wonder why people still use Control Panel. I use Control Panel all the time because it's faster. All that software is very small, very tight, very efficient, not bloated like the user interface that all the settings stuff in Microsoft Windows is bloated like. It just takes forever to open and load. They have a new volume mixer. You know what I use? I use like the Windows XP volume mixer still, because it's still there on your computer and you can still use it. And it's fast. It opens in about a second. And you try to open sound settings in Microsoft Windows, it takes like 30 seconds sometimes before it finally opens. So this is one reason why I've stayed away from everything in the Microsoft App Store. I find that stuff runs so slowly. It takes a long time to sort of launch the container that it operates within, that it's not worth the effort. I like downloading standalone software because it tends to run faster. I know Microsoft a long time they've been trying to get everybody onto this platform, but if they can't make the platform run quickly and reliably, what's the point of being on it? That's my take on it. I don't see any use for it. I tend to see it as being more useless and just slower, and I just don't want it. I just don't want it. Oh Lord. Anyways, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, I will probably end up buying it on Steam now that it's available on Steam, because it's a platform I have a fair amount of faith in. It definitely seems to be here for the long term. It's got a few upstart challengers, which is good in the sense that competition is good for the marketplace. I'm glad to see the Epic Store is kind of coming along a little bit. I know people hate the Epic Store, and I'm not really sure why. You know, okay, it's not Steam. It's not everything in one place, but Steam has such a monopoly on all digital game sales that, like, monopolies are never a good thing. The consumer always suffers in monopoly. I mean, it's nice to have a kind of a universal platform, but when it's controlled by one private company, then they charge what the hell they want, and people are forced to pay it. So having another store to compete, the Epic Store, I was a little bit annoyed at first of having to download some of my favorite games in the Epic Store, but I'm okay with it now. I'm not totally happy with it, and the reason is because the Steam Store is so much more advanced. The number one feature that I really love in the Steam Store is remote play. You can access the power of your GPU and access your gaming computer from anywhere. And as long as you've got a decently fast network connection, you can be in a hotel halfway around the world, and you'll be able to play games in almost real time on your computer. You won't necessarily be always HD quality. There'll be some lag. There'll be some, some loss of quality, especially when it's encoding a lot of changing video scenes really quickly. But in general, it's nice to have access to your games and be able to play them anywhere. I see the advantage of this, but also to have access to my GPU, because I spend a lot of money on my GPU, and if I'm on the road a lot, not having access to that and not using it to its full advantage is a bit disappointing. So I'm happy to have access to that, and even within my house to be able to play some of these games on my big screen TV instead of just playing it on my computer monitor, which my computer monitor is a reasonable size. But like some certain games deserve like a big screen. Top of my list, Red Dead Redemption 2. I finally bought that on Steam, and I play it on my TV. I play it solely on my TV. I do not play it on the computer because it deserves a big screen. It's a beautiful, beautiful game, and certain games are like that. If you don't necessarily need a good keyboard interface, if you can play with a game controller remotely on your TV, great. Some games are much more require a keyboard interface and work a lot better on a computer, and that's fine too. But just that feature, just having that feature of remote play is just fantastic, and I hope Epic will develop that one day, because there's some games that I like on the Epic Store that I like to play that I can't play remotely, that I can't play on the big screen because the Epic Store doesn't support streaming really. And it's a simple feature. Well, it's not a simple feature. It's quite a complicated feature, but it's one that Steam has implemented quite well. It's not perfect. It's not fantastic, but in general, it works pretty reliably. Sometimes you'll have days where it won't want to work, once in a while, but in general, it works pretty reliably now. It's become fairly robust, so I hope Epic will follow through with that eventually, something similar, because that's huge to me. It makes the whole Steam library great because you can access it anywhere. How are we doing here time-wise? We got about 30, just over 30, 40 minutes till we get to our top of descent here. We're just offshore the Carolinas, Georgia maybe. What are we offshore of here? Yeah, we're pretty much offshore South Carolina, coming up towards Georgia. A straight shot down here to Fort Lauderdale. Unfortunately, don't look like we're having too much ATC online today. Not a single ATC. The complete polar opposite of what we had the other day, but what can you do? That's all volunteers. People are on sometimes and they're not on other times. There's nothing much you can do about it. So I'm not gonna complain. I don't complain about the lack of ATC. I'm happy. I try to be grateful to get it when I get it. That's the way I look at it. So basic conclusion, probably going to be the Steam Store that facilitates my flight simulator purchase. The other nice thing about the Steam store, of course, I know is that you can is that it will download games in advance. So before you start, you know, the day before or 2 days before, you know, your product releases, it'll start downloading it. It'll keep it locked. It won't let you actually access it and play the game, but it will download it onto your computer in advance. So I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully I'll be able to play it right away, because I'm on vacation now, and conveniently the game comes out on the very last day of my vacation. I have to go to work the day after Flight Simulator releases, so I hope to have it on my computer on day one, and I'll do a quick little flight to make sure it works before I probably try to do one stream. Not a long stream, but I'll just try to explore a little bit, most likely around Toronto where I live, because then I'll be able to recognize the landmarks and just really feel the degree of realism. I think that's the one thing right off the bat. You'll want to fly around your own house, your own neighborhood, to see that things are accurate and realistic in that region, because that'll be your basis that you'll be able to measure it all against. Other parts of the world that you may not be familiar with, you may not, you'll want to explore them eventually, but I think to see the level of detail, you're going to want to see places that you know, and that you'll recognize the level of detail that's already there. That's my take on it anyways. Alright, well, since the ATC faded away again, I think what we'll do is we'll step away for a second interval here for about another 30 minutes. Let's just check here on our progress page here. So we're saying top of descent at 1711 Zulu. So yeah, we will do this. We will be back no later than 1710 Zulu. And maybe a few minutes before that. To pick this up, because there's just not much going on here. It's kind of oceanic. I've kind of talked my fill about Flight Simulator, I think. So we'll pick this up when we get into the descent again, guys. But thank you again for watching, everybody out there. I do appreciate all the subscribes, the likes, the follows, and yeah, we'll be back in about just over 30 minutes to set up for our descent into Fort Lauderdale. Until then, thanks for watching, guys. Stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Alright guys, Captain Abs is back here, not in the flight deck yet because we're just admiring those beautiful external views as our aircraft wends its way across the ocean off towards South Florida. It's going to be offshore for pretty much the entire time until we are just about at our destination, but we're getting there quickly now. We got just about 45 minutes, not even 40 minutes until we land, so we're going to hop in the flight deck any second now, and we're going to just see what the status update is on our airplane here. And start setting up for the descent and see if we can actually get it set up and briefed before we actually get going here. We still got some time till our top and drop here by the looks of it. Let's check our progress. Oh, never mind. There we go. Progress. We got about 5 minutes till our top and drop here. I am just enjoying this. Just looking out the window here, though. It's a great airplane model. And as much as like the next version of Flight Simulator is going to be absolutely phenomenal, it's amazing what even P3D looks like, you know. When you compare it to the basic polygon graphics that came with the first original version of Flight Simulator, it's amazing how far the sim has come. And yes, okay, at high altitudes you can see repetition, you can see the textures get repeated a little bit. And that's really tough to deal with. I mean, repeating textures definitely cheapens the cost in terms of space, in terms of how much information you've got to store on the screen, but store on your hard drive that you can put out on the screen. But of course, as you get further away, you notice those repeats, and you can see the repeats on the ocean texture right there, unfortunately. So it's a little bit disappointing. But if you're focused on the airplane like this, yeah, you kind of still notice lines there on the ocean, and I kind of don't like that. It really, there's a noticeable lines, unfortunately. Alright, we are going to hop back in the flight deck at this point here, because we do need to start setting up here. We're going to start down any second now, and actually, you know what? We've missed our top of descent point probably here. Let's start setting up for the descent. Let's start setting up for the descent. Let's get set up for the descent.
Checked.
Let's start setting up for the descent.
Check.
There he goes. Okay, so I realized the one thing, of course, that I didn't do is I didn't put in the proper expectations on my arrival here. So let's start doing some stuff really quick here, because I schmucked this one up a little bit, and that's my bad. Because a lot of the American stars do not have no star. We're on the Faisal 7. Man, let's go with parking gates. And we're going to go with 10 left for now. Alright, so if I bring this up here and go Faisal 7 arrival, so usually what I did not program in and what usually exists on a lot of American stars is an expect. And expects are not programmed in hard, but we're expected to cross. Let's see here, we're at Jalop right now. No, we're at Downpour, so we're here, but we're expected to cross Mosir. Expect at 250 knots, Mosey at 250 at 8,000. So I'm just going to put this into my FMS really quickly here. and it's going to give me, because we're going to cross it at 250, we're going to be totally messed up here. So this is my bad. I really should look at the arrival before I step away. There we go. And some have very specific altitude criteria, and some places do not. So we're going into level change, and we're going to go ahead and throw that speed brake out because we're never going to make that. But we're going to try and get down as fast as we can here. Alright, in the meantime, let's see here. We're going to set up our arrival speeds. Do a flap 30 arrival. There we go. Let's just check the weather here in Fort Lauderdale. So we're looking at 33 degrees, 3004 on the meter, so we'll just set that here so it's ready. Bumpy airplane, stop. There we go, 3004 is ready on the meter there. I'm going to bring the speed back because the bumps are making it too likely that we're going to overspeed here. So we're going to bring some of that back there. Okay, let's see here, we got the speed brake out. We are, there we go, that's what I'm looking for, is a good scale there. Alright, so we got our speeds, our VREF is 145, and let's check our approach here for 10 left. The winds are still out southeast, so yeah, 10 left is the most sensible to us today. So let's just make sure we've got everything set up for the ILS to runway 10 lift. Unfortunately, this is a 737. You got to set everything up. 110.1 and 096. And set course 96 on your side. Set course on your side 96. There he goes, he's doing it. And
Course.
there it is.
6.
The minimums for this approach for the ILS 257. So we're going to set 257. There's 257. And here comes Mosey, which we should be crossing at 8,000, and we're way high on this, obviously. There's not too much we can do about it. Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Ready.
First of all, we're just going to set, we're going to transition here before I miss it, 3004. 3004. Okay, so we're doing the Faisal 7 RNAV
Position.
as 3003 set. See if I can bring this up here. And of course I'm going to have my FMS up here. There we go. Alright, really quickly, let's brief this up here. So we've got the Faisal 7 RNAV arrival. And DME, DMI, IRU, GPS required, radar required, RNAV 1, treasure transition turbojets only, and serves a couple other ones. So we're already at Mosey, expect a 250 at 8,000. Faisal, landing west, expect vectors, no. So we'll go to Waked, BPAC, and Agoya. And somewhere on that downwind, we're going to get vectored around to the ILS to runway. Let's see here. 10 left is the expectation here in Fort Lauderdale today. Pages 11-1, 7th of September of 2018. And let's see here. 110.1 and 096. And I'm just going to double check. I've got 110.1 and 096 is all successfully set. And glide slope at Nove is 1,800 feet, ILSDA of 257. Yeah, we got that set. Touchdown zone's at 7 feet. We've got 50 feet there on the cabin altitude. MSA is 2,100 feet. All sectors are on the VOR, which is on the west end of the field. Missed approach is climbed to 800 feet, then a climbing left turn to 2,000 and outbound on the Fort Lauderdale 070 outbound to ZimAv intersection and hold or as directed by ATC. And I have to accelerate because we're below 10,000, but I'm paying attention to the briefing now really quickly here, so you just do this. There. That should be good enough for now. Yeah, we'll be okay. Really should have done this better. Simultaneous approaches, VGSI and ILS glide path not coincident. And let's just make sure that the overshoot ZimAv, hold at ZimAv is in there at 2,000 feet. As we said, it's 3-degree glide slope passing the left-hand LSR, and it's 257 RVR 4000 needed for this approach. It's a beautiful VFR day out there, should not be too much of an issue. A few clouds out there, but nothing crazy. Terrain around the field is again 2,100 feet. We'll clear everything. Weather is okay with a southeast wind and operational. No MELs on the airplane, and let's just check the flight plan for NOTAMs. Okay, quick check on the NOTAMs here. Echo between 6 left, 2 far right. 10, 20. No, that's for PRL Trudeau. Okay, so I was like 10 and 28. There's no 10, 28 here. 10 right, 28 left, 28 right. That's not standard. Doesn't look like too much going on in Fort Lauderdale. ILS 10 left. Do you see anything for 10 left here? RNAV for 10 left. RNAV. ILS 10 left. Straight in LOC minimums, but not the ILS minimums. So, okay, perfect. Nothing much has changed there. And I think we're good to go. Give me 1 second here. Just got to... Alright, we're at 12,000. Let's go ahead and get down to 8,000. Do level change down to 8,000. We still got the speed brake out. Got distracted while we were doing that briefing. And let's do... descent checklist.
Descent checklist. Pressurization. Landing altitude is 50 feet. Recall checked. Auto brake. Level 2. Landing data.
VREF 145. Minimums 257 feet. Minimums 257 feet. Minimums 257 feet set. Minimums 257 feet set. Oh, set and checked.
Approach briefing.
Complete.
Descent checklist complete.
Some days it just doesn't want to listen to me properly. Fort Lauderdale traffic.
Cabin crew, prepare for landing.
Fort Lauderdale traffic Transat 570 is on a left downwind for runway 10 left, just northwest of the field, 10,000. Alright,
Fort Lauderdale traffic over south 341 short, runway 10 left for the box to Lauderdale.
Alright, and we got some traffic, so good thing we made that call. We are hustling down at this point. Approach checklist.
Altimeters.
3004 set.
3004 set. Approach checklist complete.
Alright. Let's keep going all the way down to about 4. Let's go down to 3,000 here. It'll take us a while to get down there, but we got full brakes out here, so we'll do what we can. I think we can even get some flaps out, right? We have to bring speed back a little bit to get the flaps out. So we'll just wait a little bit longer before we get the flaps out. And one thing I want to do as well, of course, is... let's see here. Air Transat information, Fort Lauderdale. Terminal 4. I feel like they're not flying there anyways.
Lauderdale traffic. That traffic on left arm was going to 10 left. Am I able to think and kick the bus out, or are you stuck on it?
And Transat 570, yeah, we're on a, we're going to be on quite a long downwind here to lose some altitude, so you've got plenty of room to get out. We haven't even turned base yet.
Okay, Lauderdale, got a little southeast one. Again, switch departure and 10 left. Lauderdale.
Okay, so I can't find out any information about Fort Lauderdale. All it will say to me is Terminal 4. So I'm not sure if that even helps me at all here in terms of selecting a gate. Let's just look for parking gates really quickly here. Terminal 3. Terminal 4 is Concourse G. We should be landing on 10 right anyways. Okay. Concourse G. So let's see if I can find Fort Lauderdale. Concourse G. Yeah, there we go. Pick one at random. G7. Sure, we'll use JetBlue. Alright, that's probably far enough out here. So we'll start the base turn here. Flaps 5.
Flaps 5.
This was really some terrible planning. I'm usually pretty good about getting the VNAV planning in before I walk away from the flight deck, but today I did not do a good job of that. I really kind of botched that, so nothing much you can do. We're just going to swing right around, and it's going to be a long sail back to the airport. But let's see, Holland is supposed to be, I hope we're far enough out here. I think we're above the glide slope still quite substantially, so.
Those stuff, they got a top reported spotter and 10 left on the beach past the bus in Lauderdale.
How far out are we here? We're at 22 miles out. Yeah, we should be just catching up the glide slope momentarily here, I think. It's going to be a little bit hard pressed, I think, to get slowed down.
5,000.
Do our best.
Localizer alive.
Okay, Loke. Oh, we're below the glide slope. Perfect. There's the glide slope now. Speed 190. Alright, so this is going to work out okay. Yeah, we did have to go up pretty far, way farther than we should have. I was not attentive, and I'm kicking myself for that. Sometimes we get complacent in the sim world. We can get away with things. We step away from the flight deck for a long period of time. Alright, so we can probably stow the speed brake now. Going through the localizer as we decelerate, but as we decelerate it'll recapture just fine here. There we go. We probably didn't need to go out quite that far, but better. Fort Lauderdale traffic, Transat 570 is on a 20-mile final, runway 10 left. Yeah, there was no need for a 20-mile final, but anyways. Well, what are you going to do? I made a mistake. I have to live with the consequences of it and do my best to recover. And that's one of the things that I do like to challenge myself in the sim, is not to pause, not to fix screw-ups artificially, but just to run with it. Whatever you got to do to recover the situation, that's for descending 3,000 and move past it, then that's what I do. So, you know, we went out on a long downwind, longer than we probably needed to, longer than we normally would go out there. But at the end of the day, you know, that's what I had to do to get this airplane to be sure I was down below the glide slope. Because the last thing you want to do is be above the glide slope trying to catch it. Trying to decelerate and catch it is very tough. And the 3.7 is one of those airplanes that's not terribly forgiving of that either. It really does not decelerate particularly well. So you definitely want to have like a... You always want to intercept from below. It's very hard to intercept the glide slope from above in the 3.7 because it does not do steep descents well. It tends to pick up speed very quickly. It's a slippery bird. Some airplanes a little bit more forgiving, you can do it, but the 3.7 I find is one where you have a hard time getting caught up to a glide slope if you're already above it. Alright, we're going to gang bar the rest of these those lights on. You did get the seatbelts on. Yeah, he's going to call for secure. It's good to have an FO to help you out when you're screwing up some of these things, though. So far out there, can't even see the airport. 15 miles final. Getting close, though. I probably didn't need to go out quite that far.
Glide slope alive.
Checked. Sometimes it's hard to judge how fast you're losing altitude on the downwind, though. So better, like I said, better to go out a little bit too far and have to truck back in. It's not particularly efficient.
Traffic, I need traffic on final.
And Fort Lauderdale traffic, Transat 570 is coming up on a 12-mile final, 10 left.
You're on a 12-mile final for runway 10 left.
That's correct.
Right, I'm going screen in front of you for Lauderdale traffic out of Silver Airways ATR departing 1810 left to the Lauderdale traffic.
Alright, here comes the scenery for Fort Lauderdale now. Here comes the screen show on my computer. Glide slope.
Check.
Set go around altitude 2000. Set missed approach altitude 2000. Set missed approach altitude 2000. Oh, you know why? Because I didn't program any of this stuff in on the secondary. That's why he doesn't know what it is.
2500.
Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Gear down.
Gear down.
Flaps 15. I hear the whoosh as the gear comes down now. Almost there. Since you guys are all watching, I should probably make sure I'm actually centered in the flight deck and on my pedals so we can do this properly without
Final approach fix. Height checked.
schmucking it too much.
Approach altitude set.
Flaps 25.
Flaps 25.
Flaps 30.
Flaps 30.
Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Traffic to Airways ATR, passenger 1500 up and leg over runway 10 left, departing straight out to the east.
Let's start again. Let's start again.
Okay.
Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Speed brake.
Armed.
Landing gear.
1000.
Down.
Flaps.
Flaps 30. Green light.
Stable. Landing checklist complete.
Check. Fort Lauderdale traffic, Transat 570, short final, 10 left. Cleared.
Check.
Landing.
Check.
Autopilot off.
Check.
Approaching minimums.
There's somebody holding short there. Busy little airport.
Minimums.
Landing.
Check.
Sink rate. Sink rate. 30. 20. 10.
Speed brake up. Reversers normal.
Check.
Lauderdale traffic, 165, taking line up on 0 left.
Auto brake disarm.
Check.
60 knots. Check.
For Lauderdale traffic, Transat 570 is clear of 10, live taxiing for gate Golf 7.
On the 7 is 165, 110 left.
Okay to clean up.
Check.
Alright, we got taxi around the
Caution. Anti-ice.
checked. Alright, we got taxi around the other side of the terminal. It was not the best landing in the world, but we got it there. I had disconnected the auto thrust on short final, and I didn't have my thrust levers properly synced, so it rolled back a fair bit and started to sink on me, which was not what I intended at all. But, I mean, it was okay in the end, but it was not ideal. It was not ideal. And that's one of the problems I find with this airplane, is I'm a little bit suspicious of the auto thrust. Is one of the few things. Every once in a while on landing, it'll try to spool up to go around thrust even though you're landing. And obviously it becomes very problematic because all of a sudden you're adding a lot of power and greatly extending your landing distance when you don't mean to. So it's a bit of a problem in this airplane. It really kind of frustrates me. Let's see here, Golf 7. I probably could taxi on the apron. You know what I think we will do? We will take the next turn on the apron here. Alright, we did activate our GSX, so it is there waiting for us, hopefully. Yeah, not the best landing in the world, and that arrival was really, I just botched it completely. I hate to say it. I did not look ahead and put the restrictions in there, which I should have done before I stepped out of the flight deck and estimated my top of descent moment, because I wasn't really doing very much else. I was just simply doing some tidying up. I was near the computer and I just did not even realize how close we were because I wasn't looking at the map. Had I looked at the map, I probably would have realized how close we were and how much I was botching that arrival. So the only thing wrong with it really was that we ended up going out we ended up having to descend really quickly and going way out farther on downwind than we really would normally need to if we had done our descent at the appropriate time. Alright, so here's Golf, Terminal, Concourse Golf up here for Terminal 4, and 7's about halfway along the edge of it, so. You can see the LatinVFR is really taxing my computer here. It keeps on really giving it some hesitations here, but there's some neat stuff too over here. As we come down this side, you'll see one of the few sloping runways in this sim, I swear. But LatinVFR did model over here the 10 right slopes kind of upwards there towards the end. And I'm not sure if it's 10 right that slopes upwards or the airport ramp that slopes downwards. But they did manage to model that completely in P3D version 4 here. You can see it kind of slopes. You can see the slope over there.
3 minutes.
Start the APU, please.
Starting APU.
Now this looks like my guys here. It looks like no, this is not the concourse yet. This is still concourse F. We're looking for concourse G. Yeah, there's just F gates. Okay. So a little farther in here and then we'll find our G gate. Should have landed on 10 right. If I'd known we were going to Terminal Golf, and normally you'd know these things about your airline in advance, but I'm not totally familiar with their Transat's operations. You don't have good gating information in advance. You kind of have to search the internet a little bit for it. I found it on their website when it just indicates Terminal 4 is the terminal in Fort Lauderdale, so not even specific gates, but just the terminal at least. If I'd known we were landing and using the terminal on the south side, though. Obviously would have tried to land on 10 right instead of 10 left and saved ourselves a taxi. But there's the sloping runway up there, which is kind of just neat. I like it. It's not something you see very much in the FSX world, is anything sloped, especially any airport ramps, taxiways, runways sloped, so it's kind of neat to see. Alright, well at least this building has like gigantic ramp signs here, so Golf 12, Golf 11, so we got obviously to go down a couple here to get to Golf 7, probably where that baggage loader is maybe, or stairs maybe, that's probably where it is. Those stairs right there is probably Golf 7. We can read it on the side of the terminal here. I see my baggage trucks. Lights and doors. Lights and doors.
Check.
I can see my baggage trucks moving there. APU generators on.
Crew, disarm doors and cross-check.
And here we are.
Doors disarmed. APU on the bus.
I gotta say, this LatinVFR scenery is gorgeous, though. Hell on the computer's frame rates, but she's gorgeous to look at. Taxi lights off, good. Just making sure. Ramp guys hate it when you leave the taxi light on. Alright, APU's on the bus. Let's see if this jetway's gonna work here. Wow, that's a shiny jetway, I tell ya. Wow, that's shiny. Okay, I think he's gonna flick off all the switches for us. He never switched off the landing lights. Taxiing and had the taxi light off. I had the landing lights on. Wow, amateur hour here. I'm just waiting for them to recognize that we're here. Once GSX recognizes the engines are shut down, any second now, it should bring the bridge over on its own, or maybe not. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's going to. Shutdown checklist.
Shutdown checklist. Fuel pumps, off. Probe heat, off. Hydraulic panel, set. Flaps, up. Parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers,
Cut off.
weather radar,
Off.
off. Shutdown checklist complete.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
Please disconnect external power. Sorry. Please connect external power.
Roger. Connecting the GPU.
I don't know why I said disconnect. Oops. Oh well. Anyways, that's it. We are docked at the terminal. We are here, guys, and we have made it for another leg. Let's check pilot's life. It says we're done. Next leg is Fort Lauderdale back to Toronto. Slowly, slowly building up my experience points here, getting some more pay. Got almost 100 hours in my career here now. 163 experience points. And I was not the best touchdown by any means. I wonder what it logged at here.
The GPU is connected.
Thank you. So yeah, so it did not, it logged about 260 feet per minute. It's not a terrible landing. It was not the best by any means. There was some issues on short final there. But overall, pretty good. So that's basically it, guys. We made it. We're done. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys all on our next stream. Stay tuned. And yeah, guys, stay healthy, stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you all sometime next week for another stream as we head back to Toronto on A Pilot's Life here on Twitch. Take care, guys. See you soon.